subscribe, like the video, and, if possible, join Patreon. But if you don't have much money, you can support the channel by watching the novels on euroaudiobooks.com. Remember that you can participate in the polls so that your favorite novel gets published for free.
1 hour a day and 2 hours of practice a day, the effect is not much different. Therefore, Richard devoted most of his time to spiritual practice. The speed of this improvement will be faster. Physical training fixed at 1 hour a day. Richard, I'm done. Okay, I'll be right there. Richard opened the door and walked out. Then I saw Peng Si sitting on the sofa blowing her hair. Light green hair draped over her shoulders, and she changed into a set of pajamas. The whole person looks very petite. The orange hat was next to him. His face was a little red because he had just taken a shower. Richard looked away. Pence, what do you want for dinner? Just eat whatever you want. I don't have a good appetite. Richard, you decide. Okay, I'll ask the hotel to bring some up later. Richard went into the bathroom. In the bathtub, the water has been placed. Richard stretched out his finger and tried it out. The temperature is just right. Afterwards, Richard lay down in the bathtub. The warm water enveloped Richard's entire body. A faint aroma filled the bathroom. Richard's nose twitched. Apart from the shampoo and shower gel smell, there seems to be some other smell. Light like honey. Thinking of this, Richard's expression became slightly subtle. Sudden, the phone rings. Richard brought the phone over. Hey, chapter 65 this is to read. You called me just now, what's the matter? I'm a candidate who passed the Hunter exam this year. Richard said, this number was given to me by President Netero. He said, let me call this number, and you will teach me the skills related to none. Is the number given to you by the president? Well, I see. I'm sorry. I was reading a book just now and didn't hear the phone ringing. It's okay. Well, I'll give you an address. You come over by airship. After you arrive, I'll pick you up. By the way, what's your name? What does it look like? My name is Richard. Otherwise, you can give me an email address here, and I will send the photo to your email. It is good. There is an address on the other side. Richard put down his phone. So for a while. After that, Richard got up, put on his pajamas, walked out of the bathroom, turned on the hotel's computer, took a photo of himself with his mobile phone, and sent it to his email address. Richard, whose number is it? The owner of the number that President Netero gave me. Oh, Richard sat across from Pence. Now that we are a team, you should know about this. I'll show you first. A malicious thought emanated from Richard's body. In an instant, Peng Si's expression froze, her whole body froze, and she involuntarily shrank to the corner of the sofa. Cold, dark, scary. Peng Si's body trembled involuntarily. Is it similar to when Ilfin played against Killua? Pence nodded. This thing is called Nyen, Richard explained. Nun is essentially the life energy in the human body. It is very strong. By controlling this life energy, our strength will be greatly improved. Before, when Gon, Killa, Lurio, Karapika, and I passed the basement tower, I told them that they and I, Hisoka Ilmi, are not from the same world because of this. Those who have mastered none and those who have not mastered none are very different in strength. You can think of it as an extraordinary type of power. Pensy nodded. President Netero gave me this number just to find this person and learn Nun's high-level skills, which is exactly what I came for this Hunter exam. I hope you'll learn in too, Pence. In this way, your strength can become stronger, and the strength of our team will also increase. Pensy hesitated. Can I learn? Certainly. Richard nodded and said, however, before learning Nun, if you improve your physique to a stronger level, it will be better for your future development. Peng Si, your current physique is still a little worse. Richard paused. I'm going to design a physical training program for you. What do you think, Peng Si? Can. Peng Si just hesitated, then agreed. This is what Richard expected. Since he took the Hunter exam, Pensy must have come to become stronger, and the new thing Nun is very attractive to Pensy. I saw Ilmi's malicious thoughts first, and then I saw Richard's. Of course, Pence hoped that she could master this too. You can get stronger, why not? So, when do we start? Let's wait until the city where the senior hunter is located. Rest early today, and tomorrow we will buy airship tickets and go to the city where the senior hunter is located. It is good. Richard called the hotel's order number and ordered 2 noodles. To be honest, the noodles don't taste good. But during the Hunter exam, the candidates were poor and had little to eat. Even when Richard competed for the number plate, he had a very comfortable life compared to other candidates. But there are only fish and shrimp, no seasonings, I eat too much, and I don't think it's too delicious. In contrast, the noodles in the hotel seem pretty good. The next day, Richard and Pence packed up and headed to the airship plaza. According to the address provided by Senior Hunter, Richard and Pence need to go through transfer. The transit city made Richard a little concerned. Friends, XIN. This is a city where most of the world's gangsters control. Otherwise, the auction will not be held here. But ordinary people are indeed too weak in the face of none. So much so that in such a city with a strong gang background, Phantom Troop broke into the auction site and snatched all the auction items. Although the leader of Ian Beast, Shao, moved things in advance. But the strength of the Phantom Troop is on full display. And in the end, it still fell into the hands of Phantom Troop. Richard sat by the window, looking out. The airship is getting farther and farther from the ground. Pence closed her eyes. A bee quietly landed on Pence's shoulder. Once something unexpected happens, the bee will remind Peng Si. In addition, in the front and rear corners of the airship, there are Pence's bees. The matter of the airship last time made Peng Si a little concerned. Even with hindsight, it was a Hunter Society test. However, Peng Si's vigilance still increased. Richard didn't say much. This is a good thing. Chapter 66 Hunter x Hunter Sudden. Richard opened his eyes. Pence. 33 Richard. What's wrong? There is something wrong with the situation. Richard looked at the corner of the airship and said, the person in the corner is a psychic. Moreover, there's a faint malice on his body. Peng Si's face changed. I don't know what his purpose is. Let's not act rashly. Pensy, you control your bee, get a little closer to him, but don't be too deliberate so as not to let him pay attention. Yes, this is a nun that Richard has never seen. However, the other party's breath is very strong. C grade. This has been very extraordinary. After all, even the rating of Ian Beast and Richard is only D level. The Ian Beast is already the world's gangster, the elite troops that the 10 old men rely on. A bee landed on Peng Si's hand. Richard, the bee told me that this man has a spider tattoo on the palm of his right hand. 35 spider tattoo? Richard frowned. Combined with each other's image, a name entered Richard's mind. Face Shadow, the 4th member of the Phantom Troop. Because he didn't like the brigade, he pretended to die and quit the brigade. The surface is killed by Ahsoka. But in fact, Mioning just took this opportunity to escape. A strong nun. Relying on memory, you can make dolls. Traits. Puppets are embodied. At the beginning, everyone thought it was made from corpses, but it later proved not to be. If the eyes of the main body corresponding to the doll are captured and installed in the eye sockets of the doll, then the strength of the doll will be greatly improved. The number among spiders, isn't it 4? How do you know? Pence gave Richard a surprised look. This number, Peng Si was just about to say. I didn't expect Richard to say it first, because I know who this person is. Richard looked away. The ability of Face Shadow is somewhat similar to Richard, but it's different. The same is the control puppet. Richard's puppet comes from the idea of death, and the puppet of the face is made by himself. Each has advantages and disadvantages. Richard's idea of death is relatively strong. As for the Face Shadow, you don't need to kill the other party. You can also make a puppet, as long as you have the memory of this person. This memory can be your own or someone else's. The dolls can then be made. Describe it simply. Richard's is difficult but high quality. The shadow is the difficulty is small, but the quality is poor. Who is the maliciousness of the face directed against? Richard looked around for a week, but couldn't see who was worthy of being watched by the shadows. Sudden, Richard thought of a possibility. Could it be me and Pence? Richard frowned. It's very possible. Face Shadow needs a powerful puppet to improve his strength. So what kind of puppet will meet the requirements of Face Shadow? Hunter, obviously one of them. Especially the hunter who just passed the hunter exam. Generally speaking, such hunters are not very strong, but it meets the doll requirements of Face Shadow. It's easier to catch, and it can enhance your strength. Richard's eyes narrowed slightly. This face is not a real powerhouse. It's normal to choose to bully soft persimmons. Richard clearly remembers that when Nobunaga faced his former opponent, he looked down on him. After that, Face Shadow was defeated by Gon and others. Richard's eyes flickered. Richard, his target, is it us? Peng Si also has a certain understanding of Phantom Troop. Anyone who wants to become a hunter has heard of this criminal group. Strong, very vicious. It's very possible. But don't worry, Richard said. This person I can deal with, and if he shoots, you can do what I tell you to do. 99 good. 55 AC level none. Richard's is a B level, one level higher than the other. Moreover, Richard knows the nun of the face, but the face does not know of Richard. The tactic of catching the face of Hunter, who just passed the exam, is correct. Unfortunately, he met Richard. At this time, the face seemed to realize that Richard and Pinsy had found him. The candidates for this Hunter exam are of good quality. One turned out to be a nun. It's interesting to make a doll like this. A faint smile appeared on the corner of his face. The face felt the breath of Richard. However, the face does not think that Richard can pose a threat to him. One is Richard's age. The other is that Richard only went to take the Hunter exam this year, and he knew the intensity of the Hunter exam, so he decided that the candidates who took the Hunter exam would not be too strong. That's it. Since you have discovered it, let's start now. 35, a puppet appeared in front of the face. Next moment, a cloud of mist spewed out of the puppet's hand. Immediately, I saw that the nearby passengers closed their eyes one after another. Flower Zero, this fog has a strong hypnotic effect. This fog is not fatal. Peng Si took out a cloth, dipped it in water, and covered her mouth and nose. Richard, on the other hand, came to the passage. Not bad. A look of admiration appeared on his face. You've just passed the Hunter exam. You've already learned none, and your reading looks pretty good. Since that's the case, I'll accept it bluntly. Face stretched out his hand. Another puppet appeared. Don't resist. It's pointless. 5 Richard thought for a moment. A recorder appeared in his hand. Use Burroughs. Read the bullet. A thought bounced towards one of the shadow figures. A small hole appeared in the doll. But for the puppet, it is not fatal, and it can only be regarded as a small injury, which does not affect the action at all. Shadow frowned. I take back my compliment just now. Your anger is good, but your ability is quite poor. Are you joking with this level of narration? 35. Such an ability is a complete waste of your ki. Waste. The face looked at Richard. I thought that you would become a capable person among my dolls, but now it seems that you can't. You are only qualified to be cannon fodder. I think too much. I was expecting too much. What good things can come out of the Hunter exam? However, I originally came to find cannon fodder this time. Let the speed lead to death. 9, come on, kill him. The 2 dolls, under the control of the face, pounced on Richard. Richard smashed the recorder in his hand. Crack. 39, a puppet shattered directly. The overall grade of the face shadow is C grade. These dolls will only be under C. Another puppet's attack landed, but was blocked by Richard. Richard condensed ki on his arm. It was not Richard who was injured, but the doll itself. Richard's defense ability, after being strengthened by Black Aura, is comparable to Euvigen. These dolls can't hurt Richard at all. Face Shadow's eyes reappeared with a touch of appreciation. I didn't expect you to hide your strength. Disguised as a transmuter, were you actually? Manipulator? Or enhancer? However, no matter what kind of you are, your destiny cannot be changed today. It is destined to be defeated by me and become my puppet. Lee. Chapter 67, Are You Mentally Handicapped? Richard looked at the face shadow. You think you've won? Of course. 35, a smile appeared on his face, and he said, You just defeated 2 of my cannon fodder-level puppets, so you don't think you have the strength to fight against me, right? Do you know who I am? Who? Face Shadow raised his right palm. Since you have become a hunter, then you don't know what this tattoo represents, right? I know, Richard said. The Phantom Troop, a notorious criminal organization. According to legend, the people in this organization are powerful, vicious, and unscrupulous. 99, but you are an imposter. 35, Richard said that on purpose. Fake. The shadow's face sank. Richard nodded. The number on your palm is 4007, but according to what I know, in the Phantom Troop, A number can only correspond to one person, but I have met the number 4 member of the Phantom Troop. 5. He is also one of the candidates for this hunter exam. Face shadow eyes narrowed slightly. Hisoka. Richard uttered the name. Compared to you, I think Hisoka is much stronger. 35. Then, who is the imposter is naturally clear. If there is no strong person, I will pretend to be a weak person. Moreover, during the hunter exam this time, I also encountered a counterfeit like you, having a spider tattoo on his back, claiming to be a member of the Phantom Troop, but in reality, just a scammer. This prisoner did not get a chance to appear in this world. With Richard's appearance, the first 3 games were all victories, and there was no need for the remaining 2 games to compete. Neither the purple-haired female prisoner nor the fraudster competed. But because he knew the original plot, Richard knew this person. Are you mocking me? The face of the face became ugly. You think I'm a scammer? What the hell is Hisoka? 5. Just a clown who was easily deceived by me. The face snorted coldly. I don't know what the Hisoka guy said to you, but I tell you, I am a member of the Phantom Troop, and Hisoka, who killed me, got my number 5. But that's only on the surface. Actually, I took this opportunity to quit Phantom Troop. What the hell is Crusoe? 99. It was originally everyone's brigade, but he turned the brigade into his own, and everyone else became his subordinates. 99. I can't accept such a thing. Why? But what's even worse is that the other members of the regiment are on Crusoe's side. 99. It's ridiculous. Someone would like to take the initiative to be a vassal. Then Hisoka wants to join the brigade. Then it's a good thing for me. I deliberately made a puppet, let this puppet be killed by Hisoka, and took this opportunity to quit the brigade. Or can Hisoka kill me? Just a clown. Pretend. I don't look down on such a person at all. Suddenly, Face Shadow felt something was wrong. No. Why am I talking to you so much? Are you trying to procrastinate by provoking this topic? But it doesn't make sense at all. The staff of the airship have all been replaced by dolls by me, and no one can help you. There was a cold look on his face. I don't know what you're talking about. But whatever it is, it can't be successful. Richard glanced out the window. To disappoint you, I have succeeded. What? A tremor came from under his feet, and his face looked out the window, only to find that the airship had landed before he knew it. Those several staff members were replaced with dolls by their faces. But just now, Richard has used the idea of death to deal with those dolls. Peng Si entered the control room and controlled the whereabouts of the airship. A picture scroll wrapped the control room, so that Mianing Xie felt that the puppet was destroyed. The picture scroll of greed has the effect of isolating thoughts. Even the use of circles in the picture scroll, mazed by the nun, will be greatly limited. What's more, there is no such deep connection between the face and these ordinary dolls. The complexion changed. You let the airship land? Solve my puppet? How did you do it? 99, Richard smiled. How to do it? I can't tell you, of course. If you don't say it, I will know. As long as I make you a puppet, I will know everything you have. The shadow looked outside. Don't you think that when the airship landed, you can escape from me? Do not. Richard shook his head and said, You misunderstood. I never thought of running away from the beginning to the end. I just didn't want to fight on the airship. 5, come out with me. This place is too small to be used. Face Shadow raised his brows and looked at the sleeping passenger. Suddenly thought of a possibility. Shouldn't you be? In this case, you still want to protect the lives of these passengers? You have become a hunter. Are you still so naive? Since the lives of these passengers are so important to you, why would I leave? 35, stop, or I'll kill him. Face Shadow stabbed a passenger in the neck with a hand. But Richard didn't stop at all. Richard does not kill innocent people. However, he will not sacrifice himself for others. Are you retarded? To think that I would value the lives of these ordinary people more than my own? 35. No wonder Hisoka took your place. 35. You keep saying that you deceived Hisoka, but that's not the case at all. You just had to use a puppet to replace yourself when facing Hisoka. Otherwise, since you want to leave Phantom Troop so much, why do you still have a spider tattoo on the palm of your right hand, even without removing the number on it? Is it difficult to remove this tattoo? Richard continued to walk out. 5.0. Besides Hisoka, I also know a member of your Phantom Troop, Maggie. Judging from Maggie's ability, She is one of your brigade, responsible for support and assistance. 5. But even Maggie, in my opinion, is countless times stronger than you. 35. The face was angry. Bullshit. I can't be as good as that clown in his Hisoka. It's impossible not to be as good as Maggie. How can a woman compare to me? Richard shook his head. You're such a piece of crap. 35. It turned out to be SXST99. As far as I know, there are several women who are stronger than you. If you still have a little courage, come out and fight me. Richard is telling the truth. Biscuit, as well as several female members of the Hunter 12, will be stronger than Mian-ing. Chapter 68. Elite Puppet's face. Shadow's hand fell. The passenger's neck was directly pierced by the shadow. A blood vessel ruptures. Red blood spurted out. The passenger twitched suddenly. Blood stained the surroundings red. Richard didn't stop. Or can I be threatened by face shadow because of this? After all, Richard was not one of these passengers. Second, Richard stayed, and it was a worse thing for these passengers. The aftermath of Richard's fight with Mian-ing could easily kill these ordinary people. Richard came to the open space outside. The airship landed in a forest. Next to it is a lake. There is only a small clearing on the edge of the lake. Richard stood still. Shadow's face sank. The situation exceeded the expectations of the face shadow. This time, the face just got the news that 2 new hunters who have just passed the hunter exam will appear. Face Shadow is going to use these 2 new hunters to supplement his dolls. Too bad, the face can't be seen. And being able to pass the hunter exam proves that this person is at least above the standard. But the face did not expect that Richard's level is far more than 2 words above the level. What the face even more did not expect was that Richard knew Hisoka. 09, thinking back to Hisoka, his face couldn't help gloomy. Face Shadow didn't want to admit that he was inferior to Hisoka. But Mian-ing knew in his heart. He is not Hisoka's opponent. That guy is a pervert. Mian-ing didn't feel how good Hisoka's ability was. It was just normal. However, this man is too scary. Incredible. That brain is simply not the thinking of a normal person. Totally unpredictable. And his own attacks are often caught by Hisoka. In short, IQ crushing. I really can't solve that pervert of Hisoka, but can't you and I solve it? The face looked at Richard. At your age, is it comparable to Hisoka? It's just that I got a little bit of information from Hisoka. 39. Where did the confidence come from? Wait, that pervert, Hisoka, won't give my information to anyone. So, you're Hisoka's friend, right? No wonder. 35. The face snorted coldly. Then it's better. That guy Hisoka, I wanted to kill him for a long time, but killing him is very difficult. It takes a long-term plan and a slow plan. Then I'll kill you first. Kill your friend Hisoka. Peng Si didn't come out and stayed in the control room of the airship. This was arranged by Richard, because the next battle, it is Peng Si who is not qualified to join in. The shadow came across Richard. One after another dolls appeared beside the face. Little devil, just let you see my true abilities. Don't be too surprised to say that I'm not as good as Hisoka, not as good as Maggie. Now, I'll let you realize what real power is. 35. Richard looked at the face shadow, his expression calm. Then I'm really looking forward to it. Come on, or I'll be disappointed. Richard's words made the face even more angry. Kill. Kill him. A dozen dolls all swarmed towards Richard. All the puppets aimed at Richard's vital points. From all directions. These puppets are actually not weak. There's an air of thought. If it were an ordinary person, if a puppet broke into the crowd, it could cause hundreds of casualties in an instant. But Richard is no ordinary man. Richard's comprehensive strength has reached a B-level none. It is 1 level higher than the face shadow. Richard held a recorder and walked continuously among the dolls. As soon as it fell, one of the dolls was bound to shatter. At this time, Richard's accumulated fighting experience came into play. In terms of strength, these dolls are not weak, but their fighting skills are not strong. So facing Richard, they couldn't capture Richard's trajectory. Just let Richard play with them. It was impossible to predict Richard's next move, but Richard could predict their actions, one and the other. More than a dozen dolls did not pose a threat to Richard. The facial expression became a little dignified. At such a young age, It was as if he had experienced countless battles. How can there be such a person? Could this guy be from our Meteor Street? The face was on Richard's body, as if he saw the shadow of the people in Meteor Street. Whether it is from Meteor Street or not, it has come to this point, this puppet, I have to decide. Shadow gritted his teeth. Don't be complacent. These are just appetizers. My really powerful doll, I haven't come out yet. A figure appeared beside the face. The body exudes a completely different atmosphere from other dolls. This doll was made by a powerful nun from Meteor Street, and I also robbed his eyes and installed it on my doll. The strength of the doll is not weaker than the nun itself. I almost gave my life to make this doll superior. Face Shadow gave an order. The doll charged towards Richard. Richard frowned slightly. This thought is different from other dolls. It's the elite of the shadow dolls. Richard glanced. This doll, unlike those dolls, seems to be able to use the body's nun perfectly in addition to its strength. This is the most vigilant. None so weird. A burst of breath came over. Richard felt that the temperature of the air near him dropped suddenly. A layer of frost condensed on ground. A conjurer capable. The ability is frozen. Richard felt that his movements were gradually becoming sluggish because of the freezing effect. This ability is troublesome. As time goes on, my movements will become more and more sluggish. It's not the one-shot type. However, the effect is remarkable. The longer the time, the better the effect. Richard looked across. There are two solutions. 5. First, break this doll. The second, pulling the puppet into the picture scroll maze. 35. This puppet is an autonomous puppet. Even if Richard plays the crazy Sonata, making the face go crazy, this puppet will not be affected, but will continue to attack Richard. The first one is not something that can be done in a short period of time. Then, you can only choose the second one. But in this case, I need to delay it a little longer. Richard looked to the ground. A hole in the ground appeared in Richard's sight. This is Richard's previous arrangement. Send the picture scroll to the ground first. After that, when he reached the foot of the face shadow, he suddenly broke out of the ground. Now, because of the appearance of this doll, Richard needs to expand the scope of the picture scroll maze, which requires more time. The face saw the change in Richard's expression, and the corner of his mouth curved. Do you know how strong I am now? And said I'm not as good as Ahsoka, not as good as Maggie? Now tell me, who is stronger? Richard shook his head. No, I still maintain the original judgment. Chapter 69 Labyrinth and Sonata. Up to now, are you still using your tongue? Then I will send you to death. 35. A dozen ordinary dolls appeared. Richard's figure constantly dodging. Read the bomb. Strengthen tongue. Little by little, Richard was dragging his feet. Sudden, boom! On the ground, a gap opened. Right next to the face, a picture scroll broke out. Time is up. Picture scroll maze. The shadow's attention was focused on Richard, and on the recorder in Richard's hand. For the underground situation, there is no perception at all. Therefore, when the picture scroll broke through the ground, the face shadow did not have time to react. The long scroll formed a labyrinth, and the face, the puppet of the face, and Richard were all wrapped in it. What is this? His face changed. Richard's none. The strengths and weaknesses are clear. The advantage is that as soon as Richard's none starts to affect his opponent, then it is basically certain that Richard will win. No one can resist the effects of mental pollution. The state of the other party will get worse and worse at a faster and faster rate. Crazy Sonata is to make the other party become crazy and lose their sense of autonomy. The picture scroll of greed is to let the other party fall into the illusion of greed. The disadvantage is that it takes time. Whether it's a crazy Sonata or a labyrinth of greed, it takes a certain amount of time to pollute the other spirit. The stronger the opponent is, the longer it will take. That's why Richard talks so much nonsense with Mianing. Secretly, Richard is arranging the picture of greed, but Richard didn't expect that Hisoka's name would be so stimulating to the face. So much so that there was no need for Richard to say more, and the face shadow took the initiative to cooperate. Maybe it was when Hisoka defeated the shadow, which caused a great psychological shadow on the shadow. Richard thinks it is very possible. Face shadow, strictly speaking, is not very strong. According to Richard's judgment, it is a C grade, and Hisoka is a B grade. Coupled with Hisoka's character, he is very good at playing with people's hearts. I'm afraid that Face Shadow will be tortured by Hisoka before he loses. With the addition of Face Shadow, he has a very strong self-esteem. That's why Face Shadow cares so much about Hisoka. Because of the appearance of elite dolls, Richard spent a little more time. However, Richard has won this time, so the balance of victory has already been tilted in Richard's favor. In fact, even if Richard is not at the right time, Richard still has the advantage. The picture scroll of greed can not only attack from a picture maze, but also defend. Facing the enemy, the high probability of winning is still Richard. It's just that Richard wanted a more relaxed way of using the picture scroll maze. As long as the maze appears, then the Face Shadow will have no chance to turn around. What can I do for a mere painting? 9. A sharp blade appeared in Face Shadow's hand. Raising his hand, he stabbed at the scroll. But what surprised Mian-Ing was that when the picture scroll was touched by the sharp blade, there was no sign of rupture at all. The toughness of the picture scroll exceeded Mian-Ying's imagination. It's not an ordinary picture scroll. Could it be that this guy materialized? Face Shadow was startled. A manipulator who likes to pretend to be an emitter. Because it's hard to tell the difference between the two. The props embodied by the manipulator are visible to the naked eye and are almost no different from the real props. When Yuvijin and Kurapika were fighting, he couldn't tell right away whether Kurapika was a manipulator or an emitter. At the beginning, Face Shadow's judgment on Richard was transmuter. Later, because Richard shattered his doll with one blow, it was speculated that Richard might be an enhancer or manipulator. When Face Shadow sent out an elite doll, Richard resisted it and felt that Richard was more likely to be an enhancer. It was only now that the face was determined that Richard was the manipulator. These mistakes in judgment also bought Richard a lot of time. And even now, Face Shadow's judgment is still wrong. Richard understands a bit why Hisoka is doing all those fancy magic tricks before the battle, because it really works, misleading information to the other party so that the other party has a wrong judgment. Give yourself an advantage. It seems that I underestimated this guy, and he can actually materialize such a thing. However, if I can make this person into a puppet, then I will have 2 elite-level puppets, and my strength will be greatly improved. Then, Hisoka will be your death. The shame you gave me, I will never forget. 35 The face snorted coldly. I don't believe that your paintings can last forever. It's not just me who attacked this painting, but also my puppet. You can't be so angry. But what Face Shadow didn't know was that he had a puppet. Richard has it too. Burroughs, Johnson, Calkin, Lizard, former examiner. These thoughts of death were all released by Richard. Compared with the elite doll of the Face Shadow, it is certainly not as good, but much stronger than those ordinary dolls. The figure of brothers walked out of the picture scroll, came behind a puppet. Boom! A bullet was fired at the doll. Crack! A hole appeared in the doll's body, but not fatal. Immediately, the doll turned his head and looked in the direction of Boris. And at this moment, Johnson appeared. A one-handed axe appeared in Johnson's hand. An axe fell heavily. Bang! Immediately, this puppet, in Johnson's axe, became 2 halves. The lizard ran straight toward the puppet. The powerful collision force made this puppet fall apart in an instant, turning into a pile of fragments. Calkin cooperated with the former examiner. The efficiency of the two is the lowest. When the two are still entangled with the first opponent doll, the combination of Brothers and Johnson has solved the 2 dolls, and the lizard alone has solved 3 dolls. In a sense, the battle between Richard and Face Shadow can be seen as a battle between 2 puppet masters. However, in the picture scroll labyrinth, it is Richard's home field. In addition, apart from the elite doll of the Face Shadow, the remaining dolls of the Face Shadow are not as good as the thought of death controlled by Richard, and they are inferior in quality. But because of the existence of the picture scroll labyrinth, the elite dolls cannot support other dolls. The number of dolls in the shadows decreased one by one, of Zhao, until only the last one left. Burroughs, Calkin, Johnson, Lizard, former examiner, all came to the vicinity of this elite doll. The face is in the labyrinth, constantly walking through. Get out. Do you only dare to hide? 35 Face Shadow's mood became more and more irritable, even though Face Shadow's attention was focused on finding Richard. But inadvertently, Face Shadow would still look at the content on the scroll, and Face Shadow's consciousness had already begun to be affected. Hearing the voice of the face, Richard shook his head. I'm not that stupid. You are already in my picture scroll labyrinth. In other words, this battle, I have won 7. How could I voluntarily give up my advantage? Richard thought for a moment. However, this battle should be over soon. Then I will speed up the pace a little bit. A recorder appeared in Richard's hand. Richard put the recorder to his mouth. Play Crazy Sonata. Chapter 70 Death of the Shadow. A melodious voice came out. Shadow frowned. Where did the voice come from? 35 The Face Shadow only felt that his mood became more and more irritable. Involuntarily, the Face Shadow's footsteps became hurried. Boom! The face slammed into the corner of the scroll. As Richard played, he came to another battlefield in the labyrinth. The elite doll of the face. This puppet is very powerful. Before his death, I was afraid that he had reached the C rank. However, after being made into a puppet, the strength has declined a bit. In the original plot, Face Shadow made a Yuvajin puppet, but Nobunaga didn't like the puppet at all and commented that the puppet was too far from the real Yuvajin. The doll's abilities, strengths, and weaknesses are equally obvious. 99, it will be very effective against evenly matched opponents. But in the face of opponents who are stronger than yourself, it is difficult to play a role. Through the power of freezing, slow the opponent's movements. 35, but it will take time. If the enemy's strength is stronger, it can completely smash this doll in a very short period of time. 35, but because it's a doll, I'm restrained with regard to my abilities. Whether it's a crazy sonata or a picture of greed, it can't pollute the spirit of a puppet, because the doll has no spirit. If there are more dolls like this in the face, it is indeed a threat to me. But unfortunately, he only has one. 007 The thought of death, controlled by Richard, launched the final attack. Burroughs used the bullet to attract attention. Corjean uses a reinforced tongue to restrain one of the doll's legs. With the whip in his left hand, Johnson bound the other leg of the puppet, and the axe in his right hand slashed at the puppet. The former examiner came to the back of the doll. Gather the power of 4 people to control the doll. A layer of frost condensed on the body of Death Thought. And at this moment, the lizard came to the front of the puppet. A burst of red surged on the lizard's body. Second form, the lizard condensed a lot of ki in its right hand. No, it should be said on the right claw. The whole paw has turned into color. A burst of extremely strong momentum erupted from the claws. The air around him seemed to be heavy. Richard spoke up. The dolls made by Face Shadow are divided into 2 states. One is the normal state. The other is that if the eyes of the doll body are captured, then the power of this doll will be closer to the body. As long as the eyes are removed, the strength of the doll will be great. The lizard's claws pierced the doll's eyes. Buffed. Pierced directly. The 2 eyeballs were taken off by the lizard. Boom! A pinch ajfa burst. Immediately, the aura of the puppet dropped significantly, and the frost on Death's mind gradually faded away. Dolls without eyes and dolls with eyes are very different. Bang! 9 The lizard punched. A fist-sized hole appeared in the lower abdomen of the elite doll. Afterwards, Burroughs, Calkin, Johnson, and the former examiner all worked hard. Crack! Elite dolls were dismantled directly. Richard's eyes turned to the other side. Face Shadow's emotions became more and more irritable. Looking for Richard, but couldn't find it. Looking for the exit, can't find it. Inadvertently glanced at the paintings on the scroll and heard Richard's crazy sonata. Face Shadow's spirit and consciousness have reached a certain limit. Eyes are red, breathing heavily. Damn it, come out, come out. The face growled. The face at this time has long lost its calmness. A long hair became very messy. The whole person, as if he had been in some kind of chaotic prison for a few months, walked out. Richard's figure appeared in front of the face. The face stared at Richard sternly. Finally dare to come out? The little devil who only hides. Richard shook his head lightly. Hiding? No, I'm just using my abilities reasonably. 99, I have a brain. Unlike you, I just mention Hisoka's name, and you get hysterical. 5, it just gave me time to prepare. I have been in touch with both Hisoka and Maggie. 99, I have to say, compared to them, you are really far behind. The face roared suddenly. Bullshit. Nonsense? You say yes, but one thing is clear now. That is, I am much stronger than you, and you will die in my hands soon. Impossible. The shadows rushed towards Richard. Richard took out his recorder and played it. The tipping point is here. The spirit of the face was shattered. Loss of self-consciousness. A punch hit him hard in the face. Crack. The sound of broken bones sounded. Blood splattered. Mine, all mine. Immediately afterwards, a frenzied expression appeared on Mian Ying's face. The gravel and loess on the ground were piled into a pile by the shadows. It's all mine. Don't rob me of anyone. The face glared at his right hand fiercely. The other hand squeezed it hard. Crack. Broken hand bone. Richard looked at the face shadow across a layer of picture scroll. Face shadow's spirit has completely collapsed. This is Richard's none. As long as you give Richard time, no matter how strong Richard can contaminate his spirit, make him look like a ghost or a ghost. When Mian Ying gets emotional when he hears the word Hisoka, it is already doomed to Mian Ying will lose. And when the face shadow was trapped in the picture scroll maze, the probability of the face shadow defeat has become 100%. Kill him. Johnson's figure appeared behind the face. The face did not notice it at all. An axe appeared in Johnson's hand. An axe fell, facing the shadow's neck. The entanglement of the face was shattered in one fell swoop, even if the level of the face is higher than that of Johnson. However, the face shadow has no sense of defense. The key on the face of the shadow's neck is only a thin layer, and this layer can't stop Johnson's axe at all. The entire neck is broken. Blood spurted out. Face shadow's head fell to the ground and rolled on the ground. Sudden, a strong thought of death was born on face shadow's corpse. You can actually kill me? 99. How dare you kill me? Richard, I want you to die. The face's death thought roared, caught Richard's position, and rushed towards Richard. Ignore the thought of death next to Richard. But at this time, a burst of strong attraction appeared from the scroll. Face shadow's thought of death, under the influence of this attraction, involuntarily flew to the picture scroll until it was sucked into it by the picture scroll. Richard thought for a moment. Immediately, the recorder, the picture scroll, and the thought of death all disappeared. Only the tattered puppets remained, and the corpse of the face. Pence can come out now. It is good. Peng Si got out of the airship with some worry, and when she saw that Richard was safe and sound, she breathed a sigh of relief. Richard, it's really good that you're okay. Pensy was really worried. However, Peng Si knew even more that with her own strength, she couldn't help it all. Forcing it out would only drag Richard down. So she stayed in the airship control room until she heard Richard's voice. I said, don't worry. Richard paused. Peng Si, please call the airship company's emergency number and let someone handle the airship matter, and I will report this matter to the Hunter Association. It is good. The two took out their phones. The signal here is not very good, but it is barely enough to make a call. Chapter 71, The Ability of the Face, for subscription. Soon, the staff of the airship company came over. Richard showed off his hunter license. After that, he pointed to the corpse of Face Shadow. This man, the criminal who attacked the airship, has been killed by me. He has a spider tattoo on his hand and may have something to do with Phantom Troop. The expression of the airship staff immediately became vigilant. Phantom Troop. Okay, we got it, sir. Thank you this time, or our passengers could have suffered more serious injuries. You're welcome. I am one of the passengers myself. 9. Richard glanced back. I hope you can keep this matter a secret and not reveal my existence. Rest assured, we will never say more. Richard nodded. Okay, I'll leave it to you here. I still have something to do. I'll leave first. Goodbye, sir. Richard took Pence to a nearby town because the face shadow is solved, and the face shadow is the identity of the wanted criminal. Richard will get a certain reward after this matter is sorted out. This reward will be issued directly by the Hunter Association. Richard didn't want to have too much contact with these ordinary people and didn't even say his own name. I rented a car from the town and arrived at Ukexin before dark. A bustling city is no different from the city where the Sky Arena is located. One prospered because of gangsters, and the other prospered because of fighters. Find something to eat at a restaurant first, then go to the tour group. It is good. The two came to a Western restaurant with a lot of families. Steak, barbecue, no alcohol. Richard Pongsi hesitated for a moment, then said, or, tonight, you can start my physical training. I want to meet the requirements of learning none as soon as possible. I had no use facing that person before. The shadow thing, to Richard, is nothing, because Richard killed a lot of none. Moreover, Richard has an accurate judgment on his own strength and the strength of Face Shadow. During the battle with Face Shadow, except for the appearance of the elite doll, which surprised Richard a little, everything else was within Richard's plan. Misleading the shadow with information and delaying time. The layout of the picture scroll labyrinth is carried out in secret. When the picture scroll maze is successfully arranged, it means that Richard has won the battle. And even if the picture scroll labyrinth failed, the face was aware of it. Richard face-to-face still has the advantage. C plus gas volume. C's none trick. C plus physique. A level none. Even if Crawlo, Richard wouldn't be too afraid, let alone defeating Crawlo. But in Crawlo's hands, it's perfectly fine to protect himself, let alone just a mere shadow. But for Pence, it's different. Face Shadow caused great pressure to Pongsi. Pence had never faced such a crisis. The Hunter exam, the previous levels, all tested the candidate's instinctive endurance, physical strength, courage, etc. However, in the fourth test that really required battle, Pongsi basically did not contribute much. Faced with a snake handler, but those who control snakes will not read. In the subsequent finals, Pence also never really collided with the nun, even if Ilmi showed malicious intent. But that was for Killua. What Pongsi felt was just a little aftermath. The appearance of the shadow made Pongsi feel nervous. I want to hurry up and improve my strength. This thing can't be rushed. Richard shook his head and said, I know about the face and shadow, which is exciting to you, but tomorrow we will take the airship to the city of that senior hunter, and we will be there the day after tomorrow. If you are in poor condition because of physical training, and if something happens on the airship, then isn't this putting the cart before the horse? Pensy froze. I know, I'm too impatient. It's normal, don't worry about it. Richard said, when we get to that senior hunter's city, you'll be able to learn none very soon. You're just a little bit worse now, not much worse. Pongsi's true strength was the level of the fourth examination room. Compared with the explosion library, it is only one line behind. Moreover, Pongsi is positioned as an intelligence officer, which can further lower the standard. Gon and Killua are raised in such a way that they can maximize their potential. But not for everyone. After coming out of the dining room, the two entered the hotel and opened a suite, 2 bedrooms, and a living room. After taking a bath, Richard went back to his room. Locked the door. Picture agreed. A picture scroll appeared in front of Richard. Several figures floated out from the scroll. Johnson, Lizard, former examiner, face. Richard moved. Johnson, Lizard, and the former examiner all disappeared. Only the face remains. I remember that the purpose of Face Shadow joining the brigade is to make dolls of the brigade. As long as there are memories of the members of the brigade, Face Shadow can make dolls. But before, Face Shadow didn't take out the brigade's dolls. 35 on the one hand, it's because Face Shadow didn't get the eyes of the brigade members, and the brigade dolls are not strong. Richard thought back to the dolls at the time. Except for the Conjurer's elite doll, the other dolls are not very strong. On the other hand, Face Shadow doesn't want to reveal the existence of those dolls. Once the information is leaked, it will inevitably face the brigade's pursuit, and after falling into the picture scroll maze, it is too late to release those dolls. Richard's eyes flickered. I don't know if I can use the Shadow's death thought to use this ability. 35, the strength of the dolls produced is a bit poor, but it may still be able to play a role at some point. Richard looked at the face. Using my memory to make dolls, Hanzo. 35 next moment. A group of thoughts condensed in front of the face. Little by little, slowly, changing shape. Finally, a human figure appeared in Richard's sight. Same as Hanzo. Even Richard remembers the same clothes. But no eyes meet the master. Hanzo knelt down on one knee to face Shadow. Richard took a serious look. The appearance is almost identical, and it is absolutely loyal to the Shadow. Richard asked a few questions. It does have the memory of the ontology. However, the memory is not complete. Only a few parts, more like, are supplemented by my bystander memory. Also, if you can get all the memories of the main body, it would be too perverted. Then next, it's time to test the strength. Richard gave orders to the Hanzo doll. Attack me. After a few rounds, Richard stopped. Too weak. It's weaker than I expected. Richard looked at the Hanzo doll that he had torn down. Probably only the real Hanzo, 1/10 of his strength. I don't know how much stronger a puppet with eyes can be. 35 in Chapter 72, 12, Earthly Branches, Mao Rabbit. Subscription is bleak. Please subscribe. Richard recalled. There are 3 states of the Shadow Doll. The first is the eyeless state. This Richard has been tested and is 1/10 the power of the ontology. The second is the false eye state. This fake means that this puppet captures the eyes of other people, not the eyes of the main body. The third is the real eye state. That is, this doll has captured the eyes of the main body. Richard went out. You can find some gang members and experiment. Midnight. Richard was walking down the street, and when he sensed a line of sight behind him, he turned around and entered the alley. A young man took out a dagger and charged directly behind Richard. Richard's face sank. Don't say a word, just kill yourself. These people are really vicious. 95. Then, taking them as experimental subjects, I have no psychological burden. 35. Richard turned around. 007. No thought is used. Richard won a real fight and judged the strength of these people. That way there is a comparison. Okay, a powerful aura erupted from Richard's body. Suddenly, the figures of several young people froze. Row, spare life. 35. A recorder appeared in Richard's hand. Richard transferred the Shadow's thoughts of death to the recorder. The face Shadow is a puppet master, placed in the picture scroll. Its effect is not as good as that of the lizard because Richard transferred the face Shadow to the recorder and none of the face Shadow, disguised as the ability of the recorder, aiming the recorder at a young man. A special breath entered the young man's body and read the young man's deepest memory. Afterwards, Richard took the recorder back. A dark shadow appeared. A little change, slowly, into a human shape. Puppet. Richard controlled the doll and captured the eyes of another young man. Attack me. The puppet attacked Richard. Soon, Richard's test results came out. The false eye state is about 3/10 of the body. Richard took off the doll's eyes again and let the doll come to the main body. Take the eyes. This time, the doll captured the eyes of the main body, so it entered the state of real eyes. Attack me. After a while, the doll turned into pieces. The real eye state is about 6/10 of the main body. The test was done, and Richard left the alley. The next day, when a passerby was passing by the alley, his eyes suddenly widened. Several corpses lay on the ground. The blood has dried up and turned black. Some flies lay on the corpse. Dead. At this time, Richard and Peng Si had already taken the airship and left Ukexin. Pence didn't notice that Richard went out in the middle of the night last night. Sitting in a chair, yawning. 2 dark circles are a little thick. Last night, Peng Si didn't sleep well because she was thinking about the face, which made Peng Si still care about it after all. Even if Richard had comforted Pence. The 2 cities are far apart, and even by airship, it takes a whole day. Richard sat in his seat and began to practice none. Spiritual practice is not suitable, is easily influenced, and, moreover, it may affect other people. Richard is practicing the nun technique, the kind that Biscuit takes, turning key into words. Start with simple numbers. 1, 2, from 0 to 9, and again from 9 to 0, until Richard felt a little tired and stopped. Guest, what do you need? At lunchtime, the 2 came to the restaurant. 1 set A, 1 set C. Okay, please wait. 99. Richard and Pence sat in the corner. Sudden, a loud noise sounded. Richard couldn't help but look over. A passenger, for some unknown reason, had a fierce argument with the cook. It looks like a fight could happen at any time. Several airship staff rushed over and pulled the 2 away. I saw it with my own eyes. You spit into the soup. The words fell, and all the passengers immediately looked over. Richard glanced at the soup on the table. Peng Si, have you had the soup? Not yet. Peng Si's hand had already reached out to the bowl of soup, but when she heard the sound, she stopped abruptly. Richard, too, hasn't had a drink yet. Richard doesn't like to drink soup in the middle of a meal, either before or after the main meal. But that didn't mean that Richard didn't care about the chef spitting into the soup. Soup did just that. What about other dishes? Richard calmly came to the cook. Take a look. After that, take away a chef who is familiar with the chef in question. Using face shadows, make puppets. A mass of breath invaded the chef's body. Richard let the chef go. Come to the corner. A doll identical to the chef in question appeared. This is one of the usages of puppets. Part of the memory of the ontology can be obtained. Although the memory obtained will not be too many, the ones that are near can be obtained. At that time, did you spit into the soup? Number 35, Richard breathed a sigh of relief. It would be disgusting if the chef was really that careless. Now it seems that it is the passenger who is talking nonsense. Richard returned to the scene. This chef did not spit into the soup, I can testify. You are an ordinary passenger. The passenger looked at Richard disapprovingly. You said you didn't see it. Didn't you look at him all the time? Richard looked at the passenger. You said you saw it. Then, can you describe the scene at that time? 99, why not? 99, the passengers started to make up their minds. But soon it was punctured. It's easy to make up a lie. However, it is difficult to fabricate a lie without loopholes. There are so many people here that it is easy to find flaws. In the face of numerous evidence and witnesses, the passenger could only admit that he was framed. And the reason, just because the passenger felt that the food the other party gave him was too small. But Richard took a look. Not much. Richard shook 5.0's head and returned to the table. It's just that when something like this happened, Richard has no appetite. That's why most people don't like talking about gross things at the dinner table, except for those heavy flavors. The night passed quickly. The airship has landed. Richard had already said hello to the senior hunter in advance. The other party said that they would be picked up at the airship square. Peng Si, take the exit this way. 35, it is good. A sign entered Richard's sight with Richard's name on it. The one holding the sign was a girl who looked a girl. Short curly orange hair, wearing bunny ears on the head. Small in stature, he is on a par with Peng Si. Hi, I'm Richard and this is Pens. The girl showed a smile. Hello, I'm Jorn. Chapter 73. Peon's manner this name. Richard has an impression. Hunter Association, one of the 12 earthly branches. Mao Rabbit. I like to eat candy. An ancient book hunter. Hunter belonging to the intelligence and research type, not the combat faction. However, being able to become the 12th Hunter Association will not be too bad in terms of combat. Richard didn't expect Netero to let Jorn teach him. Come with me, my car is parked here. Good. 99 Richard and Pence followed behind Jorn. In addition to the bunny ear decoration, Richard even saw a rabbit-tailed decoration behind Pion, which made Richard's mouth twitch. These 12 hunters, in order to better fit the name, are really hard enough. However, not everyone is like that. Parastone, Kim Freaks, and later Leorio, Kurapika, who joined the Hunter Society, did not. Get in the car. Richard noticed suddenly. Pion's mood seemed to suddenly become excited when he got into the driver's seat. Richard suddenly had a bad premonition. Sit tight. Jorn fell with a thud. Immediately, the roar of the engine was heard. Gone. The body jolted violently. Richard and Pence were just sitting down. If it wasn't for Richard and Pence still having a bit of strength, they might have been thrown out of the window. Jorn looked excited. Richard really didn't expect it. One of the 12 members of the Dignified Hunter Association, Maudu, looks like a petite girl, but is so interested in racing. And more importantly, the driving skills are not very good. Several times, Richard saw that, if it wasn't for Piorn's use of none, forcibly interfering, he might have collided. This car will not sit in the future. Richard made a decision. All the way. Finally, the car stopped at the gate of a small manor. Richard is not surprised. One of the 12 Hunter Associations, among the hunters, is already a top-level existence, and there is definitely no shortage of money. Come in. Richard nodded, got out of the car, and was in a normal state. But Peng Si was different. Her face was pale. Sorry, I drove a little faster just now. 35, seeing Peng Si's face. Payon said a little embarrassedly. I'm a person, after touching the steering wheel with both hands, it is difficult to control, sorry. 39, it's okay, we're all okay. Payon walked in with the two of them. There are many people in the manor. Some of them are servants of the manor, and some of them may be members of Payorn's team. A mature hunter will have his own team. Gold freaks, Kate, and many more. The 1200 teams can be regarded as Netero's team. It's just that the team rarely gets together to work together. Therefore, the 1200 teams will each have their own small teams. A woman stood at the door, similar to Payon, but she looked much more stable, and her body exuded an aura that no strangers could enter. This is my sister, Kaylin. 99, hello, senior. Richard glanced at each other. This Karen's age looks noticeably older than Jorn. Payon, on the other hand, calls Kaylin his sister. So this proves that Pijoan's age is not what it seems. Richard couldn't help thinking of Biscuit. Jorn, probably in a similar situation to Biscuit. Involuntarily, Richard's eyes on Jorn changed. This is Richard and Pence, the new hunter who just passed the hunter exam this year. Jorn said, Kaylin, you go get them a room. 35-1, Richard asked subconsciously. Jorn's eyes turned. Aren't you a couple? I was in the car just now, but I saw your hands tightly clasped together. 5, not yet. Peng Si lowered her head and did not speak. Her face was already red. Kaylin didn't understand what was going on. Sister, are you racing again? It's just driving a little faster. How can it be considered a drag racing, the driver's business? It doesn't count. Richard noticed that Jorn seemed to be afraid of his sister. Okay, I promise you, next time you don't drive so fast. Payon looked at Kaylin a little unhappily. Go get a room for Richard and Pence. Kaylin nodded, turning to Richard and Pence. You two come with me. Jorn's house was large, with 3 floors. Kaylin took Richard and Pence to the 2nd floor. To stay in these 2 rooms, 35 bathrooms and toilets are in the room. If you need anything, you could tell me anytime. Richard pushed open the door. Senior, thank you. 35, you're welcome. Kaylin paused and said, I'll go downstairs first. Okay. Richard looked away. This person, Kaylin, looks very cold, but when I really get in touch, her personality is still very good. It may be that Payorn focused all his skills on reading and ancient books. Life skills, I don't know anything about it. So much of life is taken care of by my sister, Kylene. 99. 6 in this way, it is possible to explain the relationship between Payon and Kylene. 99. Richard put down his luggage, entered the bathroom, rinsed, changed a set of clothes, and came out. Peng Si still hasn't come out. Girls bathing is always more troublesome. Richard went downstairs first. Payon sat on the sofa, and when he saw Richard, he couldn't help beckoning. Richard sat across from Pijon. Richard, you want to learn Nun's advanced skills, don't you? Yes. Then let me see your thoughts first. Is it entangling or refining? Show all 4 majors. 99. Richard nodded. First start with entanglement, then refinement, and then absolute and condensate. As for the words, Richard didn't show it. Neither the Sonata of Madness nor the picture scroll of Greed are suitable for display. My hair is a bit peculiar and not suitable for display. Jorn nodded. It's okay, that's enough. It can be seen from your entanglement, refining, smashing, and condensing that you still attach great importance to the basic skills of Nun, which, Zhao, is very good, because learning advanced Nun skills is a must prepared. I will arrange a systematic training for you first, and after you complete this training, I will start teaching you high-level skills. Richard nodded. It is good. Jorn handed over a book. The above are some of my study notes. You may use them. Thank you. 7 years. You're welcome. Since the president asked me to teach you, then I must teach you well. At this time, Peng Si came down from the upstairs. Her eyes were obviously a little nervous, and it was better to see Richard. Come to Richard and sit down. Jorn looked at Pensy. Pence, don't you know Nun? Won't. Pence glanced at Richard and said, Richard said that my physique is not strong enough, so I should do physical training first, and then learn Nun after reaching the standard. Well, Richard is right. This would be better. Do you want me to help you develop a physical training plan? Chapter 74, Hisoka's rating, subscription, then trouble the seniors. This is what Richard said. Richard has prepared a physical training program for Pence, but Richard is not a professional after all, and Jorn will obviously have more experience. There are even professional teams. No trouble. Jorn stood up. Let's go to the training ground now. I'll take a look at your situation and make a plan for you. Going out, along a slate-paved path, Jorn brought Richard and Pence to the rear of the manor, where a training ground surrounded by barbed wire appeared in the sight of the three of them. This is my training ground. Jorn opened the door. Pence, come here. 35 Pence glanced at Richard. Richard nodded. Pence went to Jorn. Do some preparatory activities first, and then test your strength, speed, reflexes, and finally test your physical fitness. Yes. Over there, Pyron's test on Pence began, and Richard took out the notebook that Piorn had just given. After a while, Pence's test was over. I will give you a plan tomorrow, and you will follow the plan and come to the training ground for training. 99. Yes. Thank you, Senior. You're welcome. Jorn waved his hand and walked towards Richard. Richard, let's 007S try it out. Actual combat? 35, that's right. Jorn nodded. You have a real fight with me, so that I can know a little more about your situation. Want to use hair? Number 35, Richard nodded and came across to Pion. Pence left some. Pence has not yet learned to none. Even if it is just the aftermath of the battle between Richard and Pion, Pence cannot bear it. Start. Both of them were wrapped with ki at the same time. None, even if they didn't make it, are countless times stronger than ordinary people. A wrap is equivalent to making the nun wear armor, and it's armor that's tougher than steel. But it doesn't affect movement like steel armor. Coupled with the words, the nun are stronger than ordinary people, and there will only be more. Boom! The two fists collided. Richard felt the powerful force that bounced back. This surprised Richard. The opponent is petite, but his strength is not weak at all. But after thinking about it, Richard was relieved. The age of the other party is not what it looks like at all. This is a character similar to Biscuit. Jorn's eyes lit up slightly. The strength is good. Continue. Jorn increased his attack speed a little. Richard was in Jorn, and Richard was doing the evaluation at the same time that Jorn was evaluating Richard. Regarding the control of ki, the other party is stronger than himself. Fighting skills, the opponent is also stronger than himself. In terms of strength, the opponent is still stronger than himself. However, in terms of defensive ability, he will be stronger. It's because I absorbed the black aura from the monster's corpse last time. Even if it's a B-rank nun, the defense is stronger than mine, not much. Richard recalled something. That is, in the Hunter election chapter, Hisoka once conducted an assessment of the 12 Hunter Association. Hisoka scored 95 points against Ilfin. Jorn's score is only 77 points. From this point of view, Pion seems to be weaker than Ilmi. But Richard could feel it right now, Jorn not weak. At least not 20 points worse than Ilmi. Richard hadn't seen Jorn's hair. However, for the control of ki, Jorn has already surpassed the vast majority of people. And Netero had Jorn teach Richard the advanced skills of Nun. Then Jorn certainly will. Plus, the time for Pion to learn to read is here. Hisoka's score. First of all, this is just Hisoka's idea. Hisoka has not had close contact with Pion, or even seen Pion make a shot. 35, Pinin's own temperament is indeed not a fighting type. But like Biscuit's usual state, Ajfa, is not a fighting type either. 35, second, Hisoka's score is not necessarily based on the opponent's strength. Because Hisoka's interest is not here, Hisoka cares about the fun of the battle. Yuvajin, Phaeton, Liza, etc. have the strength, but Hisoka is not interested at all. Thirdly, Hisoka's judgment is not necessarily accurate. Just like when I was in the Sky Arena, Hisoka had no interest in fighting for me, and only after seeing the picture of my greed did he become interested in fighting. Fourth, that is Hisoka has never stated his benchmark score. In Hisoka's heart, how much will he be? Hisoka never said that. Preliminary judgment, Piorn is at least a B grade. But I don't know what Jorn's second form will look like. Jorn stopped. Richard caught his breath. Both just clicked and stopped. I have basically understood your situation. Jorn looked at Richard. Nen has a good grasp of the basics. 99, excellent physique. In terms of fighting skills, it's not bad. After a pause, Pion said, "In the next week, I will continue to practice combat with you. If I don't have time, I will let Kalen practice with you." 35. Let's get here first today. 99, the three returned to the house. By the way, what do you want for lunch? We can do whatever we want. Richard and Pence looked alike. Then I'll decide. Senior decide. 35 on the table. Richard found that the number of carrots on the table was a bit too much. Richard gave Jorn a casual glance. Did Payon completely put himself in the role of a rabbit? However, Richard didn't mind. There is nothing wrong with eating more carrots. The next day, training officially started. Pong Si was doing physical training with a person beside him, using training props. Richard is fighting against Payorn, and Payorn points out Richard's inadequacies while fighting Richard. It's been like this all week. In the middle, Jorn had gone out on a business trip and replaced Kalen. From the looks of it, Kalen's breath was stronger than Payon's. However, after the real fight, you will find that Kalen's actual strength is weaker than that of Jorn. This immediately reinforced Richard's opinion on the Hisoka score. Hisoka is not a god. How could he accurately judge the strength of a nun just by looking at it? Most nun will hide their true strength. Hisoka's score can only be used as a reference, and it is still a small reference. 35 a week passed. Back to the training ground again. Jorn looked at Richard. The first phase of training is complete. Now I teach you your first high-level nun technique. Week, Chapter 75 in Trouble, subscribe. Jorn handed over a stick. The so-called Jo is to extend one's ki from the body, not only to wrap the body, but also to extend it to the things in his hands. Like this stick, it's just an ordinary wooden stick. Jorn came to a stone. However, after wrapping it with gas, the stick will become extremely tough. Jorn lifted the stick and stabbed at the stone. Crack, stabbed directly into it. Richard, try it. Richard nodded. Pion guided by the side. Use condensate first and observe the condition of the ki in your hand. Afterwards, imagine that you treat the stick as a part of your body and control your ki to extend and wrap around the stick. 35, it's hard. 35, after all, something like ki is produced by the body itself. For other things, there'll be strangeness. However, at this time, Richard's anger, already successful, wrapped the stick up. Jorn's eyes widened. Richard, did you succeed? Richard looked at the stick in his hand. This seems to be easier than I imagined. But Richard soon understood. The first one is related to one's own ability, the medium of one's ability. One is the recorder, the other is the picture scroll. In a sense, both are equivalent to the extension of ki. Second, before, I had already practiced the control of ki. It's been since the hunter exam. Use gas to heat and bake food. Control gas changes into numbers. It seems. 35, Richard took the stick and stabbed the stone. Crack. Stones were pierced like tofu. Jorn's eyes lit up. Richard, you are a genius. Pion recalled the scene where he was studying at the time. At that time, I was studying for a week, but it took a whole day, which was already more than a lot of people. I didn't expect, Richard. You just listened to me once and learned it right away. Richard smiled. Maybe it's because I have practiced ki control before. Even so, you are still a genius. 35, Pion paused and said, since you have learned Joe's skills, then the rest is just practice. You have to smash all the stones in the corner. In that case, with regard to Joe's practice, you are finished. Richard nodded. Jorn walked over to Pens. Richard picked up the stick. Weak. A burst of air was wrapped around the wooden stick, which was not very stable. After all, Richard had only just learned this technique, and he was not even familiar with it. The first step is taken, then the next step is just a matter of practice and time. 5, Richard looked at the stone in front of him. Crack, crack, 35 stone after stone shattered. Sudden. Richard thought about it. Breaking a stone is actually not very difficult. Why don't I further exercise my control of ki during this process? I can totally sculpt with these stones. As soon as Richard thought about it, he immediately acted. The first time it failed. The second time it failed. But over time, Richard gradually figured out the skills. Moreover, Richard felt that his mastery of Jo was faster than simply knocking stones. Do hard exercises and you will progress faster. 3 days later, Richard finally made his first successful sculpture. Is a puppy. Not lifelike, but the basic shape is fully visible. That's not enough. Richard looked to the side. A piece of paper entered Richard's sight. A stick is a hard thing after all. And if I could use weeks attached to the paper, wouldn't it be more difficult? Is the effect of practice better? Richard thought about it and did it. Because of Joe's effect, the paper immediately became sharp. Puppy sculptures are becoming more and more real. Jorn looked over. The situation exceeded Pion's expectations. Jorn originally thought that Richard was still hammering stones, but unexpectedly, Richard had already started to play with sculpture. Good idea. A flash of admiration flashed in Pion's eyes. Not because Richard used Joe to act on paper. This is not difficult. The key is that Richard uses this paper to make sculptures. And the sculptures made are very realistic. I'm more interested in art. For flowers, zero, Richard smiled. On to none. A crazy sonata that is music. The other is the picture of greed, which is painting. Both are related to art. Being able to make such a sculpture about Joe, Richard, you have almost mastered it. Let me teach you the next technique. Ken. Richard used condensation right away. Jorn said, the so-called firmness is to use a larger amount of key in a short period of time to wrap oneself. Tangling and refining are required, and they're used at the same time. 39, especially on physical exertion. Richard nodded. This is equivalent to the burst mode, which improves your explosive power in a short period of time. And after the burst is over, you will enter a period of weakness, which is equivalent to overdrawing your power. 5, if you can maintain persistence for an hour, then you're considered qualified. Jorn said. Richard nodded. Yes, senior. There is no tricky way to practice hard. You can only practice, keep practicing. It's similar to physical training. Only one is the physical strength of the squeeze. The other is the squeeze gas. But key comes from physical and mental energy. Learning to be strong is easy. It's hard to master it. It takes time, and the time you can practice in a day is limited. Forcibly overdrafting is harmful to the body. In his spare time, Jorn taught Richard another technique. Hidden, absolutely high-level skills. In the case of making it difficult for the other party to notice, use the hair. In other words, use the hair while you're using it. The other party can't feel your anger and naturally has no defense. And this time, your hair suddenly attacked each other. Then, the other party will suffer your attack without any defense. Once hit, unimaginable. By the way, you can also practice the circle technique synchronously. 99. Similar to Jian, this is also a derivative of entanglement and refining. Be self-centered and diffuse the key out. As long as it is within this range, it can be perceived. Richard begins with simultaneous practice of 3 high-level techniques. And at this time, a letter was sent to Payon's estate. Jorn's face darkened. In trouble. And Chapter 76. Pyorn's entrustment. Subscribe. Noticing the change in Pion's expression, Kalen couldn't help but ask, Sister, what's the matter? Charlie, they're in trouble. Pion said, they're trapped in the ruins. This letter was arranged in advance by them. It is not in a very critical situation and will not be sent. 5. Right now, I'm afraid they're in a bad situation. Kalen hesitated. Sister, what are your plans now? I want to hire a few hunters from the Hunter Association, but there are not many hunters with time, and their strength is not enough to be honest. And there's also a lack of hunters for information acquisition. Kalen suddenly looked in the direction of the training ground. Pion, did you forget the 2 of you? Pion followed Kylene's line of sight. You mean Richard and Pence? That's right. Kylen said, Richard's strength is above the level of 007. The foundation of the 4 majors is very good. Zhou, Yin, Jin, and Yuan have basically been mastered. I have a faint feeling I'm not even Richard's match for a real fight. And Pengxi, even if she has not mastered none yet, but Pengxi's bees are a very good means of obtaining intelligence and exploring unknown areas. This is an ability that many Nun people cannot envy. You, me, Richard, Pence. The 4 of us forming a team will not be worse than Charlie and the others. Jorn nodded. Say so. However, I don't know if Richard and the others will be willing. 35. I'm going to ask them. Jorn finds Richard and Pence. Richard Pence. Well, my team members have a problem. Now they are trapped in a ruin, and I don't know if they are alive or dead. I want to ask if you can help me with this, and I and Kalen, we will form a team to rescue them. Richard suddenly realized that it was no wonder that in this manner, he didn't see many other members of Jorn's team. It was because of the mission, and Pigeon and Kylene stayed at the manor, most likely because of themselves and Pensy. Netero had Jorn teach both of them. In a sense, Piorn's team would be trapped in the ruins, somewhat related to Richard, and if Piorn was with them, the trouble might have been resolved. However, Richard would not agree to it immediately. It's no small thing. I see, but I can't decide now. I need to look at the information about that ruin. Yes. 99. Kalen handed over a document. Richard took a serious look. Jorn was not displeased by it. If Richard simply agreed without asking anything, then Jorn would have doubted whether it was the right choice for Richard to join the rescue team. An irrational teammate. It would be better not to. A relic of a religious temple. Piorn's team went to this ruin because there may be a lot of ancient documents in this religious hall. Piorn is an ancient book hunter. It is Piorn's interest to find and translate ancient documents. Before, the judgment of the Pion team was that the danger of this ruin was not high. But looking at the results now, it's clear that's not the case. This religion worships a creature that likes flames, a dog with flames burning on its body. People within the religion call this creature a god. Richard looked at Jorn's team members again. There were 4 in total who went to the ruins. One named Charlie, the Enhancer, a man named Angel, Conjurer, a person named Lilith, Conjurer, a person named Sally, Emitter Ability. What is the strength of these 4 people? Kalen said, Charlie and Lilith are about the same as me. Angel and Sally will be a little worse. Richard nodded. In this case, the strength of this team is not strong. For Kalen, Richard's rating is a C grade. In this case, the strength of that team is 2 C grades and 2 D grades. And if he formed a team with Pion, Kylan, and Pensy, that would be 2 B grades, 1 C grade, plus a pure tool person who is not considered combat power, Pensy. The strength of this team is much stronger than those of the 4. Okay, this commission, we take it. Thanks. No. Seniors, you have helped us a lot during this time. Jorn nodded. If that's the case, let's get ready and leave tomorrow. 39. It is good. Back in the room, Richard sorted out his strength. Comprehensive strength, B grade. Mindfulness, C+. Reading skills, C. Fighting, C +0. Must kill, A. Hidden Jian Zhou Yuan. 35. These 4. Zhou, I have mastered them very well. Hidden is still unable to perform. Can last for 20 minutes. The extent of the circle with a radius of 3 meters. At the beginning, Richard thought that the radius of a circle was only related to the amount of ki, but after practicing, he found that this was not the case. The amount of ki was only one aspect. Moreover, the larger the diameter of the circle, the stronger it is. Because the circle has 2 sides. One is scope, a sensitivity. From this point of view, Nobunaga's circle is not so bad. With a radius of 3 meters compared to Kate, Gino's circle is far worse in scope. Probably because Nobunaga added the main boost to sensitivity. Richard lowered his head and looked at his fist. But the defensive ability in my body is one of my advantages. The black aura on that monster has strengthened my defense. When I learn to be smooth and hard again, then my overall strength will steadily reach B+. The next day, Jorn, Kalen, Richard, Pence, the 4 went downstairs. A car parked at the door. Jorn subconsciously sat down in the driver's seat. However, under Kalen's gaze, he had to move to the co-pilot. Richard and Pence breathed a sigh of relief. Pion's stance skills are really not to be complimented on. Richard and Pence sat in the back seat. Let's drive to the airship square first, and after 5.0, take the airship to the city near the ruins. It is good. Soon, the 4 of them arrived at the airship square. The car that Kalen drives is many times more stable than Jorn. However, as soon as he got out of the car, Richard suddenly felt a malicious gaze. A middle-aged man came here. More than a dozen people followed behind the middle-aged. Boy, it's not bad. It turned out to be one person picking 3 at a time. 2 little Lolitas, 1 high-cold royal sister. Good taste. And playing the rabbit. 5, it's nasty. Isn't it cool to tug at the rabbit's ears? Suddenly, the middle-aged face turned cold. You won't forget what happened on the airship, nosy fellow. 5 middle-aged did not notice that the faces of Pion and Kylene had completely sunk. Chapter 77 Canyon. Subscribe. Richard glanced at this person. To be honest, Richard didn't remember this person very much. It wasn't until the other party mentioned the airship that Richard remembered that this person was the one who had troubled the chef before. If you have a conflict with the chef, that's all. As a result, this person, in order to make everyone stand on his side, actually said something that made everyone sick. A good lunch was ruined by this man. Therefore, Richard will stand up and stand on the chef's side. The middle-aged looked at Richard provocatively. It takes a price to meddle with your own business. I have been looking for you for several days, and today I finally let me catch you. Now I will show you what will happen if you are busy with your own business. Superior, don't kill him first. I will torture him slowly. As for these girls, however, the middle-aged words are not finished yet. Kalen dodged and came to the middle-aged man. 1 punch. Boom! The middle-aged figure suddenly turned into the shape of a well-cooked shrimp, and the severe pain made the middle-aged complexion pale and twisted, blood oozing from the corners of his mouth, and he sucked in the cold air violently. Richard could see clearly. Just now, it was Jorn who was going to do it. A burst of substantive killing intent overflowed from Pion's body. But Kalen took 1 step ahead of 09. Richard remembered an image. Hunter exam time, the 3rd exam. Minchi faced the provocative candidate and wanted to kill him. Bokhara shot ahead of time, seriously injuring the candidate, so Minchi stopped. In essence, it is to protect that candidate. What Kalen does now is the same. Richard's eyes flickered. In this way, this kind of thing is not 1 or 2 times. Otherwise, Kylene's reaction will not be so fast. Pion on the surface, it looks petite and weak, but in fact, it is definitely not the case. Richard has already judged that Jorn has a second form, and Biscuit are similar people. Seeing the scene now, I'm more certain. And it is certain that the second form of Pion is absolutely terrifying. Certainly, this refers to killing intent and strength, not appearance. Jorn's real appearance may not necessarily be as tyrannical as Biscuit. The people behind the middle-aged man were stunned for a moment, then looked at Kylan and glared at him. The next moment, I saw Kalen's figure quickly passing through these people. Bang! Boom! Boom! A series of voices sounded, and these people all fell to the ground. Let's go. 39. I've already booked the airship ticket. Kalen looked back at the 3 of Pion. No one gets justice for middle age. It may be because middle-aged people hang out here all the year round, and they are unpopular. The 4 got on the airship. A row of 4. Kalen is next to Jorn, and Richard is next to Pens. For hours later, the airship landed. There was no interlude in between. It takes about 2 hours to drive from here. Let's go buy a car first. Peng Si asked subconsciously, don't you rent it? This time, the car is likely to be damaged or even scrapped. If you rent it, you will have to pay more for damage. In comparison, it is more cost-effective to buy it. Pensy nodded. That's it, experience. With the sound of an engine starting, the 4 of them sat in the car at a very fast speed, away from the city, and headed towards the direction of the ruins. The road became more and more difficult to walk. Before entering the ruins, let's introduce our nun. 35 Piorn said, I am a conjurer's ability user, and when fighting, I mainly focus on close quarters, and my key can cause corrosive damage to the enemy. Kalen, who was driving, said, I am also a conjurer's ability, and the ability is air conditioning. My ability is this. Richard hesitated, and a scroll appeared in his hand. This painting, as long as you have enough energy, can extend infinitely, defend, and attack. My usual usage is to use this painting to create a picture scroll maze. As long as the enemy enters Mo's maze, then my chances of winning will be great. 5 Richard did not disclose further information. Crazy Sonata. And mental pollution, Richard did not say. It's like Pion didn't say anything about his second form. After all, the 2 have known each other for a short time. I can operate the bees, and the bees can send me some simple messages. That's fine, Pion said. Pengsi, you are the key player in our operation. Your bees can provide us with considerable help. When we reach the ruins, let your bees go first. 5, it is good. Richard, your main job is to protect Pensy first. Can. Sudden. The road is gone. A piece of gravel ruins stood in the way. Even if it was cleaned up temporarily, it was too late. There are too many rubble, and the area of the ruins is too large. Get out of the car. We can only walk through the distance below. Walking through the ruins, Richard suddenly felt as if something wasn't quite right. A very strange breath seemed to be coming from the front. This breath, Richard is somewhat familiar. It's somewhat similar to the aura of the monster in the basement tower. It's a different aura, but it's very similar to the same type. A canyon appeared in front of the 4 of them. The ruins are just below this canyon. Pion looked at a stone beside him. A mark is engraved on it. Charlie and the others, it's from here. Pengsi, can you let your bees go down and see what's going on first? Can 007 immediately. Several bees flew out from Pensy's hat and flew into the canyon under Pensy's order. The vibration of the bees' wings gradually weakened. Richard glanced down. That breath became more intense. Below, bottomless. After waiting for a long time, the bees did not come back. Pensy frowned. My order to my bees is for them to come back at least one at this time, but none of them have come back now, and it is very likely that they have been killed. Jorn looked down. There's no other way. We can only go down and explore the way ourselves. Kalen, you, and I go down first. Richard, you and Pence stay on top first. After we confirm the following situation, we will inform you. If the rope shakes twice, you will come down. If the rope shakes 3 times, you will come down first. Richard, if it doesn't move, then don't come down. Go to the Hunter Association and find President Netero. If the rope didn't move, it meant that the trouble below was far beyond expectations. Pion and Kalen didn't even have time to shake the rope. So if Richard and Pence went down, it would only cost 2 more lives. I see. Seniors, be careful. We will. Pion and Kalen secured a rope. After that, go down the rope. The figures of the 2 gradually disappeared from the sight of Richard and Pence. Chapter 78, Giant Spiders. Subscribe. Richard, what are you talking about down here? Do not know. This is the disadvantage of Pence, who has not yet become a nun. If Pengsi becomes a nun, then Pengsi can add a circle effect to the bee, similar to Kuba in Phantom Troop. The replicas made by Kubi-Ai have a circular effect. In that case, Pensy would know what the bee was that attacked the bee when it died just now. Sudden, the rope trembled. 3 times. Richard looked at Pence. Pengsi, you wait upstairs first, I'll go down first. Then be careful. Will do. Richard went down the rope. A flash of fire appeared. Kalen lit a torch. Senior, what's the situation? 99, it's a spider. Piorn said, there are many spiders here. The small ones are similar to ordinary spiders, but the big ones have reached the level of monsters, and Pensy's bees were killed by them. We cleaned up the spiders before letting Pensy down. Years Richard looked around. This is already not a multi-word description. It's almost like entering a spider's lair. Above the ground, above the stone walls, are densely packed. In addition to spiders, which are spider webs, there are countless spider eggs. A burst of corrosive aura emerged from Pion's hands, and when those spiders touched it, they were immediately corroded. Half of their bodies rotted, fell to the ground, and twitched. And the spider that Kalen touched turned into a frozen state. After landing, it fell apart. Picture of greed. Richard directly covered an entire area. Wrap yourself and spiders in it. Those spiders, seeing the content in the painting, immediately entered the illusion, constantly fighting and killing each other. Spirit is polluted. Let them not attack Richard at all. Even the spiders that came in from behind were also quickly affected by the painting. One by one, joined the cannibalistic battle. Richard didn't even need to shoot. This ability of mine is actually very effective when dealing with low-strength enemies. I only need to unfold the painting, and they themselves will solve themselves. Even the thought of death does not need to be dispatched. The loss to Richard's key is quite small. In the middle, the corpse of the spider became more and more. The more dead, the more spiders swarmed Richard's side from outside. Pion and Kalen couldn't help but look in Richard's direction. Richard's efficiency is very high. However, if you consume too much ki here, it will actually be detrimental to the situation in the future. These spiders are not worth it. 99 Jorn shook his head. From what I know about Richard, he is not someone who doesn't understand this. Maybe there is something special in his painting. We will know when he comes out. 95 The ground suddenly shook. Pion and Kalen's expressions changed. Richard retracted the scroll. Above the ground, a pile of small spider corpses. Just see. The eyes of the three people looked in one direction at the same time. A huge figure was approaching the three of them. Spider. Good spider. Richard's expression changed slightly. This spider is like a hill. Moreover, this spider also exudes the breath of thought. This is no ordinary spider. Instead, the spiders of aura nodes are opened. These monsters do not have a complete NIN system like humans, but there are some monsters that can open aura nodes. These beasts, although only entangled. However, having mindfulness and not having mindfulness are completely different levels. This spider is not easy to deal with. Richard looked at the spider. Congeal. 9. The amount of ki is very good, above the B rank. After all, it is such a large body. Jorn's pupils shrank. Kylan, look, there are two figures on the spider's back. Yes, it was Charlie and Angra, lifeless and dead. 35. The expressions of the two of them sank at the same time. Jorn said, even Charlie and Angel died in the hands of this spider. In addition to opening aura nodes, this spider may have other abilities. Richard, Kalen, be careful. Pull the position. Richard and Kalen looked at each other and nodded. Before, the three of them didn't pay that much attention. The number of monsters who have opened aura nodes is small, but it is not uncommon to see the three of them. But killing Charlie and Angel, that's different. Richard's eyes flickered. According to Jorn's information, Charlie is a C grade and Angra a D grade. 5. Being able to kill these two people, this spider must have its own uniqueness. Right now, a cloud of white suddenly shot at Richard. Richard jumped. A spider web fell on Richard's previous position. Richard fell. The speed at which this spider web is shot out is not inferior to that of a thought bomb. But this is just the beginning. Immediately, the spider let the three of Richard know how it killed Charlie and Angel. Countless cobwebs spewed out. Like a machine gun, densely packed, covers almost the entire space. Come to my side. The breath of looking down on Pion's body overflowed a lot, and he looked down on the spider web. Karen came to Pion's side. A frozen breath and a corrosive breath made the spider's web lose its stickiness before it got close. Richard, there is no past. Because Richard had an idea and wanted to try it out. This spider has a lot of gas, even with the deaths of Charlie and Angra ahead. But Richard had figured out what the spider was capable of. It was by relying on the amount of ki that Charlie and Angel were piled to death. The cobwebs didn't work on Payon and Kalen, and the spider didn't use any other means. This proves that this spider has only this ability. If that's the case, then I'll take your life. Painting Scroll Labyrinth. The Zhao. The picture scroll, under Richard's control, kept extending, getting longer and bigger, and swept toward the spider. The spider panicked, continuously spraying cobwebs on the scroll. However, the picture scroll is too long. Weak. Above the picture scroll, a sharp aura overflowed. The cobweb was directly cut off. One end of the picture scroll came to the side of the spider, directly wrapped around the spider's legs. The spider struggles, using its mouth parts to bite. But with the power of the spider, this painting, for a while, the spider cannot tear it apart. Richard quickly approached the spider, attracting the spider's attention. By time for the formation of the picture scroll maze, the scroll is getting longer and longer. Finally, spiders, Richard, are all wrapped up in this picture, layer after layer, without a single gap. Outside, you can't see what's inside. A faint fluorescent light emanated from the painting. The spider involuntarily looked at the painting. Chapter 79 Spiders Thought of Death. Please subscribe. At this time, the spider was still destroying the scroll. Mouth parts bite. Cobweb spray. However, when a spider was trapped in the picture scroll maze, the failure of the spider was doomed. This spider, the mind is above the B level and has reached B+. But in other respects, it's not that great. Taken together, the strength is only in B-. Give Pion enough time, and it will definitely be the spider, not Pion, who will die. Richard, also on top of the spider. The role of mental pollution is playing. The spider's mood became manic. Several thoughts of death appeared. Johnson, with a whip in one hand and an axe in the other. The lizard, with its whole body flushed red, entered the second state. Former examiner, this is basically useless. Richard made no further move, but waiting. Wait until this spider is completely mentally polluted. Unfortunately, there are other people present. Crazy Sonata, not suitable for use. Richard glanced back. Through the gap, Richard saw that Pion and Kylene had come out, looking at the picture scroll maze. A little worried. Richard, I don't know if he will be the opponent of that spider. Jorn said, Richard should be fine now, but it is impossible for him to maintain such a stable picture, but we are still ready to support. A sharp voice suddenly sounded. Richard looked at the spider. Mental pollution has been completed. The spider's resistance to mental pollution was worse than Richard expected. It may be because this spider has a lot of ki, but most of it comes from its physique. 5. In terms of spirit, it may not be as good as sea level. The spider, who fell into the illusion, became crazy. Like a mad dog. Come on, kill it. Richard gave the order to Death Mind. Immediately, all thoughts of death rushed towards the spider. And the spider, unaware. There is no defense. Even if he was hit by the attack of death thought, he had no intention of fighting back. The spider immersed in the illusion can no longer perceive everything in reality. In terms of strength, these thoughts of death are much weaker than spiders, but the spider did not resist. So even ants can eat elephants. What's more, the gap between the idea of death and the spider is not that big. Green blood flows from the spider's body. Fell on the scroll. Ajfa, a burst of blue smoke came out, even corroding the scroll. But it doesn't matter. As long as Richard is angry enough, the picture scroll can be repaired. The breath of the spider became weaker and weaker. Finally, bang! 35. The figure of the spider fell heavily. But Richard did not solve the picture scroll maze. A burst of extremely strong breath emerged from the spider's corpse. Thoughts of death. Richard gave a smile. The idea of death appeared. 35. Even if it is a monster, as long as it has a thought, the thought of death will appear. My guess was correct. The spider glared fiercely at Richard. However, in the picture scroll, a powerful attraction immediately erupted, inhaling the spider. Richard transferred the spider's thought of death to the recorder. The ability to spray cobwebs is suitable for use with recorders. Picture scroll labyrinth. Release. The scroll disappears. Richard's figure reappeared in the sight of Pion and Kylene. Richard, are you all right? It's all right. 39. Richard pointed to the spider's body. I have killed the spider. The corpse of your teammate, Senior, may have suffered a little damage. 99. It's okay. Pion and Kalen looked at the two corpses with a look of loneliness in their eyes. Sighed. These two teammates have been with Jorn for a long time. Leave the corpses here first and take them away when we come out. 99. Richard, let Pensy come down. There is no danger here now. Richard nodded. It is good. Kalen placed the two corpses and used some stones to surround them and fix them. Richard's strength is much stronger than we expected. Yes. Kalen paused and said, in real combat, I shouldn't be Richard's opponent. 5. The future is terrifying. 35. Pensy went down the rope. Anything unusual on it? Number 39. Richard brought Pence to Jorn and Kylene. Richard, do you want to recover? Need not. Okay, then let's continue. 35. Pigeon looked at Pence. Peng Si, let your bees be in front. It is good. A dozen bees, under Peng Si's control, flew forward. That's the benefit of having scout-type teammates. If not, you need to be approached. But in this case, the risk is extremely high. With bees, even if the bee dies, it is only a loss of one bee. Innocent. There's a water hole in front of it. I don't know what is in the water hole, but there is no bridge over the water hole. There is no other way around. 5 Jor nodded. Let's talk later. Not long after, the 4 came to the side of the pool. This water is very dark in color, and the silence is a little bit wrong. Under this water, either poisonous or ferocious predators live, Jorn said. At this distance, it's not difficult for the 3 of us to pass along the mountain wall. But Pence, you shouldn't be able to make it through. None people can condense ki on their feet. Even if it is a steep mountain wall, they can walk on the ground in a short period of time, but the consumption of ki is slightly larger. Let me build a bridge, Richard said. I use my paintings to build a bridge. Point 55. However, I need someone who can hold on to the other end. Kalen stood up. I go. Sister, save your anger. We have already encountered such a spider just now. I don't know if there are more dangerous creatures in it. Your strength is the most important. Pion nodded, but made no objection. Richard handed one end of the painting to Kalen. Kalen condensed her ki on her feet. After that, he stepped on the stone wall and walked on the stone wall at a very fast speed. At this time, the faster the speed, the less ki Kalen consumes. The scroll is getting longer and longer. Finally, Kalen falls. The figure fell steadily on the opposite side. Richard fixed the length of the scroll. The painting is not shown above. Richard deliberately erased it. Senior Kalen, please hurry up. 99, it is good. Richard looked at Pigeon and Pence. Senior, Peng Si, you 2 go up. 99, good. 9, the 2 jumped onto the scroll. Pion took Peng Si and quickly walked in the direction where Kalen was. Sudden. At this time, the water's surface boiled. Countless fish appeared on the surface of the water. These fish are small in size, but have sharp teeth. And at first glance, it is the kind of hunger that I don't know how long. He jumped up and flew towards Piorn and Pence above the scroll. Chapter 80, The High Platform of White Bones. Subscribe. These fish teeth are extremely sharp, and once bitten, the consequences are unimaginable. A flash of panic flashed in Peng Si's eyes. Fish too many. Pence couldn't hide it all. Jorn's face sank. A mass of corrosive air spilled out from Pion's hand. But at this moment, the picture scrolls. Richard sent in more thoughts. It is not the length of the scroll that is raised, but the width of the scroll. After that, control the scroll in the middle and roll it up to form a cylinder. Wrap Pion and Pens in a cylinder. In this way, these fish cannot bite the 2 people in the cylinder. Can only nibble on Richard's picture. But this picture is not so easy to bite. This is what Richard embodied. Richard glanced at the surface of the water and turned the scroll toward the underwater side, revealing the painting on it. Therefore, after seeing the painting, the fish in the water entered the illusion. The consciousness of the fish is gradually occupied by greed. Start robbing that which doesn't exist. Bite, fight. The blood stained the nearby water red. Peng Si, take advantage of now. Jorn took Pence and accelerated suddenly. The moment the 2 landed, Richard jumped onto the picture scroll, and after that, Kalen yanked it abruptly. Richard also controls the scroll shortening. This force brought Richard's figure to the opposite side of the pool. Peng Si looked back at the water pool, and there was a hint of fear in her eyes. Those fish are horrible. The strength of a single line is not strong, but if the number is large enough, it can cause a huge threat. There are markers here. 35. It was left by Sally and Lilith. 99. Kalen came to a stone wall. Being able to leave a mark here shows that Sally and Lilith are not dead, at least not by the hands of the pool and the spider. Jorn was slightly relieved. The entire team, just 6 people, 2 have been confirmed dead. Now Sally and Lilith still have hope of being rescued. Go on. 35. The road narrowed. The mountain walls on both sides gradually closed. The front turned into a cave, but the 4 of them just hesitated and entered the cave. There is only one way here. If Lilith and Sally are still alive, they must be ahead. In the dark cave, only the footsteps of the 4 people echoed. Dan, Dan, Dan. 99. Suddenly, Kylan in front stopped. There's a fork in the road. 35. No signs, no idea which way they were going. There are no obvious marks on the ground. Richard said, "It's better that we split up, and I'll be in charge of a road with Pence." This, Jorn hesitated. The danger here is very high. and there may be more vicious beings than the spider. If we separate, will we be defeated by the monsters here? I can keep myself and Pence safe, Richard said. There are 3 paths here. If we check them one by one, it will take too much time. Maybe your senior team members will not insist that we find them. 99. Richard, are you sure? Pion looked at Richard and said, Lilith and Sally are my teammates, not yours. You don't have to take such a big risk. It's not fair to you and Pence. I'm sure, Richard said with a smile. If I am in danger, I will definitely come back. Okay, then remember, your own safety is the main priority. Good. 9. Richard took the road to the left. The reason why Richard would make such a suggestion was not that Richard really put the lives of his teammates more seriously than himself. It was because Richard felt that there was some special aura coming from the fork on the left. This aura was the same aura that Richard had felt before, that was similar to the monster in the trap tower. After the death of the monster who stole the tower, it brought benefits to Richard, raising Richard's defense to a level comparable to that of Yuvigin. Richard felt that this might also bring benefits to himself. Additionally, Richard wanted to experiment with his newly acquired skills. Cobweb. Pence followed behind Richard. The air in front suddenly became a little damp. When Richard thought about it, a recorder appeared in his hand. Compared to the picture scroll of greed, the realization of the recorder does not need to consume so much gas. Call out. A cracking sound rang out. Richard quickly blocked the recorder in front of him. Boom is a tongue. Richard looked over. Just saw, in the corner, a huge frog. Use burrows. Read the bullet. A nimbus was fired at the frog. 33 directly penetrated the frog's head. He fell to the ground, twitching constantly. This is the characteristic of low-level creatures. Even if they are fatally injured, the nerves of the body will not die immediately. 0. Ask for flowers. 0, but can still struggle for a while. Lower creatures, more regenerative. Some bodies are broken in 2 and can be reborn. Use spiders' cobwebs. A cloud of white shoots from the end of the recorder. When approaching the frog, it turned into a net, binding the other party firmly to the ground. Peng Si, keep up. It is good. Peng Si looked at the frog's corpse, with a hint of disgust in her eyes. For this kind of creature, Pensy instinctively did not like it. Richard slowed down. Richard, what's wrong? There seems to be a situation ahead. Richard said, You don't move here for now. I'll go ahead and take a look. A ray of blue light entered Richard's eyes. Richard saw it. It's some blue crystals. Exudes a faint light. The further forward, the more and denser the number of crystals. So much so that the front was brighter than where the canyon spider was. An empty circular cave appeared in front of Richard. In the center, there is a high platform. Above the platform is a building. The door was open and Richard could see what appeared to be some bookshelves inside. This is the church where the books are kept. Pion's team is here just to get the books inside. Richard moved on. The road is broken. Richard looked down. Pupils shrink. Below, there are countless corpses. Human bones laid underneath. Layer after layer. Richard couldn't even see the ground. How many people will this kill? Richard glanced around to see if he could find a way to the building in the middle. And at this time, sudden, help, save me. 35. Richard hurriedly looked at the voice. A figure was tied to a pillar. Is a woman. His clothes look dirty and torn. But it is modern. Then this person, with a high probability, is a member of Pion's team. Are you Lilith or Sally? I'm Sally. Sally yelled. Be careful with Lilith. 95. Be careful with Lilith. It's all made by Lilith. Lilith, she's changed. A dangerous breath suddenly fell on Richard. Chapter 81. You can see at a glance that you are not human. There was a sound of chains. Richard looked over. It was to see that another woman was bound by chains, and the other end of the chain was connected to a huge stone pillar with strange patterns carved on it. Don't trust her. She's not Sally anymore. Not even human. The evil god has taken over her body. Hurry up and stop her. Now she's regaining her strength. And when she's back to full strength, it's too late. We're all going to die here. We have to stop her. Peng Si stuck her head out of the passage, her brows furrowed. Richard, who should we trust? Richard frowned. I'll take a closer look. The 2 men, one was tied to a post, and the other was bound with chains. Both said the other had changed. Just from the words of the two people, it is impossible to tell which of the two people is true and who is false. 007-inch congeal. Richard looked at the two of them. Also can't see anything. Both of them have an aura similar to that of a monster trapped in a tower. And at this time, Richard suddenly felt that a strange breath poured into Richard's eyes. Immediately, Richard saw it. Whether it was Lilith or Sally, a strong black aura was shrouded in it. Exactly the same black breath. Moreover, the breath of the two is constantly increasing. The stone pillar and the chains were the source of the breath. From both of them, Richard could feel the deep malice. Maliciousness that wants to devour Richard. I see. Richard, have you figured it out? Yes. Richard nodded. Peng Si, you go back first. It is good. After Peng Si returned to the passage, Richard looked at the high platform again. Wait a minute. I'll save you right away. Sally, hold on. Richard condensed his ki under his feet. At the same time, the picture of greed under Richard's control drilled into the bones and extended from the gap to the high platform in the middle. Get longer, get wider. You are wrong. Sally is not human anymore. Why should you trust Sally? You will kill us. 99 Lilith asked angrily. Sally, on the other hand, showed a happy expression. Yes, what I said is true. Lilith turned into a monster. Rescue me, the two of us, and kill Lilith together. 39, Richard nodded. Don't worry, I'll be right there. Richard noticed that when he approached, whether it was Sally or Lilith, the black aura that wrapped around them was all excited. They all wanted Richard to be close. Because the truth is, these two people are no longer human. All are monsters. All the words are false. They're all acting. Just to lure Richard closer. Richard approached along the middle of the mountain wall, kept going up, and looked down. The picture of greed had already surrounded the bottom of the entire high platform. Not enough. A little bit. Richard then looked at Lilith. Lilith, you say Sally is the monster. Do you have any proof? If you prove it to me, I will believe you. 99 Lilith pretended to give a surprised look. Of course, I can attest, didn't you notice? Sally's power is getting stronger and stronger. Is this something that humans can do? Impossible. Sally has been possessed by the evil god and is recovering her strength. There is only one explanation. Richard nodded. It seems so. 99. So, Sally, do you have any explanation? Sally opened her mouth. No, it's not some kind of power. It's my curse, Lilith's curse on me. If I have such a strong power, why don't I kill Lilith now? 5. Richard had a thoughtful look on his face. It seems to make sense. Lilith and Sally looked at Richard at the same time. Hurry up, otherwise it's really too late. 35, come here. Richard glanced down. Okay, it's almost time, I'll come. Richard's figure came to the top of the mountain wall and then kicked his legs. The whole person's figure came towards the high platform. Lilith and Sally had smiles on their faces. But Richard, too. A dangerous breath fell on Richard's body. As soon as Richard landed, Sally and Lilith's attack would come. But before this, painting maze. The picture of greed under Richard's control wrapped around the entire high platform, including the buildings inside, and extremely fast speed. The reason why Richard said so much nonsense just now was to delay time. Let the scrolls be laid out in advance. Now, in just a moment, the entire high platform is wrapped. Not a ray of light penetrated from the outside, only the faint fluorescence on the scroll. Lilith and Sally fell silent. What have you done? Lilith and Sally cannot see Richard and cannot attack. Richard's voice sounded. It's very simple. It just created an environment that is absolutely beneficial to me. I have to say that the acting skills you showed just now are still good. But unfortunately, I can see at a glance that you are not human. You already saw that. Sally's face changed. Then are you kidding us on purpose? 35. No teasing. I'm just stalling for time. Sally and Lilith's faces became ugly. Cunning humans. Do you dare to come out? Even if you isolate us from the outside world, what can you do to us? Our power will only become stronger and stronger. You will still die after a while, and we will make your death very painful. Richard's voice sounded. If that's the case, why would you want me to come to this high platform? If you want to break free from the shackles of your body, it's not that simple. In this time, can I kill you all? Lilith snorted coldly. Want to kill us? Come on, just a human. How can you do it with 5.0? Whether it can be done, just try it. Richard thought for a moment. The picture scroll in front of Sally and Lilith shook. Involuntarily, Sally and Lilith looked over. Richard noticed that the eyes of Sally and Lilith changed. The spiritual pollution ability of the picture of greed is equally effective for Sally and Lilith. Mental pollution is effective. However, these two, no, the two monsters have very high resistances, much higher than those of the face. Then, let's double stack it. Picture of greed and Sonata of madness. Use both. 35. A recorder appeared in Richard's hand. Crazy Sonata. Richard put the recorder to his mouth. Play. A melodious voice entered the ears of Sally and Lilith. Chapter 82 helped me buy time with the sound of the crazy Sonata. Sally and Lilith's eyes changed faster. The two kinds of mental pollution act on Sally and Lilith at the same time. The effect is superimposed, and the consciousness of Sally and Lilith is constantly occupied by greed and madness. What is this? Sudden, Sally realized that she seemed to be suffering from mental pollution. What ability is this? Why can I occupy my consciousness? Affecting my emotions? No, this is not a human ability. You're not human either. Stop it, stop it. We are the same kind. Richard wouldn't stop at all. Are you not human? Of course you are human. And even if he is not human, it is not the same as these two monsters. These two monsters have lost human consciousness. Once these two monsters are let go, the first thing they will do is to kill themselves. The thought of death. Johnson, Lizard, Burroughs, Koken, the former examiner, appeared one after another. Attacked Sally and Lilith. Sally and Lilith, on the one hand, have to suffer from double mental pollution. On the other hand, he had to endure the attack of the thoughts of death, such as Johnson. And their bodies were bound by 09 again, unable to fight back. Only incompetent fury. Sudden, when Sally approached Johnson, she suddenly hugged Johnson, abruptly endured the damage of several other thoughts of death. One bite, biting Johnson's neck. Johnson's thoughts of death struggled, but Sally's strength is much stronger than Johnson's. Next moment, Sally took a sharp breath. It was when he saw Johnson's thought of death that it was actually alive and was inhaled by Sally. Johnson disappeared. Sally's momentum has risen a lot. On the other side, Lilith also caught the former examiner. The two thoughts of death disappeared. Richard frowned. It's a monster. Even the thought of death can be swallowed. This is something Richard has never encountered before. Be careful, don't get too close. 99. Richard stared at Sally and Lilith coldly. It's a big deal. I'll spend a little more time and kill you all. The thought of death did not dare to get too close and adopted a long-range attack. The light on the scroll became more and more intense. Richard's clarinet was getting louder and louder. Lilith and Sally are doing their best to fight against the power of spiritual pollution, but only for a while longer. With the passage of time, the effect of mental pollution will become stronger and stronger. Moreover, the tainted part of the spirit itself will also become Richard's help, preempting, attacking, and consuming the original consciousness of Lilith and Sally. Time passes little by little. Finally, Sally couldn't stand it any longer. More than half of the spirits are polluted, and the remaining half cannot resist. A touch of black stained with Sally's spirit. Sally's eyes instantly became hollow. Greedy, crazy. Two emotions crossed Sally's face. Bang! 35. Sally broke free from her restraints. It's mine, it's all mine. Next moment, Sally charged towards Lilith. Lilith's face changed dramatically. Damn, Sally's attack was much more ferocious than Richard's death thought. Don't rob me. 35. Kill you. Immediately, Lilith was seriously injured. This made Lilith have to devote some of her energy to confront Sally. However, after Lilith drained this part of her energy, her resistance to mental pollution became weaker. A touch of black, also infected with Lilith's spirit. The consciousness of both of them disappeared. Only greed and madness remain. Richard's playing continues. Sally fiercely stabbed her hand into Lilith's heart, and Lilith also bit Sally's neck fiercely. Boom! The two fell at the same time. Richard put down his recorder and breathed a sigh of relief. The body is a little unstable. Maintaining the picture scroll maze and the crazy Sonata for such a long time is a great drain for Richard. I didn't expect these two monsters to have such a high resistance to mental pollution. Fortunately, before I came, I had practiced hard. A mass of black breath floated out from Sally's body and floated towards Richard. The same is true for Lilith. As the two groups of black aura submerged into Richard's body, Richard immediately felt that his body had recovered a little, and the effect was the same as the aura on the monster who had been trapped in the tower at that time. After that, the bodies of Sally and Lilith turned into a pool of blood and slowly infiltrated into the soil. There is no thought of death. It now seems that these two monsters and the monster that trapped the tower should be of the same type. Unfortunately, two thoughts of death were lost. Fortunately, it's Johnson and the former examiner. These two thoughts of death are the least useful to me. And from these two monsters, what I got is the improvement of physique and the great enhancement of defensibility. The picture scroll disappeared. The recorder disappeared. Richard sat on the ground, resting against the stone pillar. In the passage, Peng Si stuck his head out. "Richard, how's it going?" "Already solved." Pensy breathed a sigh of relief. Peng Si was very worried about the situation just now. However, apart from worrying, Peng Si can't do anything. Not none. Peng Si has no effect at all when facing an opponent of this level, and she will be killed with a single blow. "Pence, what happened to those bees you went with Pion and Kalen?" Pensy shook her head. "Not yet back." Suddenly, a loud voice sounded. Richard quickly looked in the direction of the voice. It's a stone wall next to it. Boom! On the stone wall, a crack appeared. Richard quickly became vigilant. Crack! The stone wall shattered suddenly. A void appeared. The next moment, a huge leg appeared in this void. Spider legs. Judging from this leg, this spider is not smaller than the spider Richard killed before, but bigger. Crack! The stone wall shattered again. The whole piece fell with a bang. A figure entered Richard's sight. Senior Kalen. Kalen turned back. Richard looked over, only to find that behind the broken stone wall was a space similar in size to this one, but the content inside would be slightly different. Boom! 39, another voice sounded. Richard finally saw it. The giant spider not only was not smaller than the one Richard had killed before, but was 3 times bigger. Also open aura nodes. On the opposite side of the spider was Piorn. Kylan, Richard, buy me some time. Jorn's expression became serious. It is good. Richard and Kalen nodded. Chapter 83. The second form of Jorn Kalen charged at the spider. The cold air freezes the air around the spider. Richard, on the other hand, rematerialized the picture of greed, wrapped around the spider, and bound a leg. Spider put down Pigeon and glared at Kalen and Richard. At this time, he saw that Jorn took out the backpack. Inside is sugar. Various sugars. Jorn shoved the sugar into his mouth suddenly and chewed it. 1, 2, 3. Soon, the package of sugar was all eaten by Pion, and the breath on Pion's body also changed continuously as he ate these candies. Richard saw that Jorn's form had changed. The shape hasn't changed much, but the momentum on the body is completely different. As I guessed, Jorn really has a second form. This level has reached AB+. May have even touched the edge of the A. 35. The air around Jorn seemed to have become heavier. Karen, Richard, get out of the way. Richard and Kalen stepped back quickly. Bang! 35. A burst of noise. In an instant, Pion's figure came to the front of the huge spider. Fist. Crack. 35. The carapace on the spider's body instantly cracked a gap. Kalen and Richard retreated to the high platform. Richard glanced. The previous 3 forts were actually in the same direction, leading to 3 different caves. But these 3 caves were adjacent to each other, separated only by a stone wall. 3 caves, 3 buildings. The one that Richard entered is for books. The one in the middle is like an altar. The other one, like the living room. Kalen explained, "This is the second ability of my sister. After eating a lot of candies, you can transform into an enhancer in a short time, and the strength will be much stronger than that of Conjurer. 5. and conjurer's abilities can still be used. That spider, my sister can solve it, Richard nodded. When Piorn entered the second state, the spider had already entered a state of being hanged and beaten. Piorn's speed was too fast, so fast that the spider could not catch it all. Moreover, although Piorn's attack cannot be fatal to spiders in one hit, basically, it can seriously injure him. In such a short time, countless wounds have appeared on the spider's body. Senior Kalen, can I ask a question? What is the problem? Senior Jorn strength. Among the 12 Hunter Association, how much can you rank? Kalen was silent for a while. It can be confirmed that there are only 3 stronger than my sister. One is Chunlong, Porter Bai, one is Haiju, Gene Freaks, and the other is Zimo, Pariston. According to the information I know, Enhancer's sister can be ranked 4th. However, most people don't know about my sister's Enhancer ability. Maybe the other 12 will also have their own hidden strengths and things. Before there is a real battle, it is impossible to determine the strength of the opponent. Richard nodded. I see. Thank you, Senior Kalen. Now hearing Kalen's words, Richard can be sure that Hisoka's rating can only be used as a reference. Hisoka can't see those hidden things and can only make judgments based on what he sees. That's normal. After all, there are 1,200 teams, but they are second only to Netero. Even if they may not be selected as the 1,200 teams simply because of their strength must at least be above the standard. Among Hisoka's ratings, among the 12, almost none are higher than Ilfin. It doesn't make sense at all. Hearts, nothing worse than the Zoldyck family. A loud voice sounded. The figure of the spider fell to the ground. Jorn, leaping high. Boom! After that, the figure fell at an extremely fast speed. Richard could feel that amazing momentum. Boom! Jorn fell, landed on the spider's head. I saw the spider's head shattered in an instant, turned into countless pieces, and splashed out. Juice splashes. The ground is corroded. The spider's body twitched violently. Crack! A crack appeared on the spider's stomach. Countless balls flew out. Are these spider eggs? Richard dodged, not letting the spider eggs fall on him. The spider's stomach shriveled at a speed visible to the naked eye, and those spider eggs either fell to the ground or splashed on the stone wall, and a strong stench wafted away. Richard, did you see Lilith and Sally? Richard hesitated, then nodded. I see. What about them? Come with me. Richard brought Pion and Kylene to the platform and said, I saw them here before, but they were in a bit of a wrong state. One was tied to a post, and the other was tied in chains. 6, when I came to this high platform, they tried to attack me. I feel that their breath is very strange. It's not like their own consciousness. It's like something is controlling them. Afterwards, the building collapsed in the hands of the 3 of us. 39. Suddenly, Lilith and Sally turned into a pool of blood and melted directly. And now these things on the ground are what they have become. I saw this situation during the Hunter exam. It was the 3rd session of the Hunter exam, and one of the prisoners in the lowly trap tower turned into a monster, attacked other prisoners, and used humans as food. He also attacked our candidates and was defeated by one of the candidates. And then it turns into blood and melts, just like them. Richard didn't fully inform, but he didn't fully hide either, because Richard wanted to know how these monsters came about. Pion and Kalen's expressions became extremely serious. The 2 looked at each other. Afterwards, Jorn looked at Richard. Richard, don't talk about this matter. Let's search this of Zhao ruins first, and when we get back to the manor, I'll tell you the information about this matter. It is good. Richard nodded in agreement. The 4 started searching, but mainly Richard, Kylene, Jorn. Some books were sorted out. Most have decayed, with only a few remaining relatively well-preserved. Let's go 7. Back in the nearby city, they bought airship tickets overnight, and the next morning, the 4 returned to Piorn's manor. All 4 were tired. Jorn looked at Richard and Pence. Would you like to take a break first? No. I have already rested on the airship. Well, Pion nodded and said, this is not the first time that such a thing has appeared. It has always been there. And the specific manifestation is that a certain human or a certain creature will suddenly change its temperament and increase its strength. When they kill, they turn to blood. 99. This phenomenon we call infection. Chapter 80 for the secret of the Dark Continent, Infect. That's right, this phenomenon, which we at the Hunter Society calls infection, has many ways. It may be seeing something special. It may be hearing something. Not fixed, elusive. 39. The only thing we can be sure of is that as long as the other party is infected, then there is no chance of being rescued. Don't hesitate. Killing them directly is the best choice. Jorn paused. This time, it was my mistake. I didn't expect that there would be such a risk in this ruin. Richard frowned. Isn't there any clue to be found? Isn't that the case every time? Not really. There's no clue at all. Jorn said, there will be an infection. There must be a medium. Most of the medium, we can't find it. There are not enough such things. We can still get some medium. These mediums all point to one place. 35 what? Dark continent. Pion looked at Richard and said, this matter needs to be kept secret, but because you have already been in contact, I can tell you, but you don't tell others. The Dark Continent is a very dangerous continent with dangers all over it. Humans get into it, and it's hard to come back. But 007. In that continent, the power of certain creatures will penetrate into our human world and affect some human beings. Many churches have appeared like this. Some churches are harmless to humanity, and some, it's harmful. It can even actively guide the infection. As far as I know, the ruins this time belong to a neutral faction. I don't know why such a change happened. I will study the ancient documents that I brought back later. 5 Richard's eyes flickered. There are some differences between the intelligence revealed by Pion and what Richard knew from the plot. Senior Pion, you mean that under the influence of the creatures of the Dark Continent, among us humans, there will be 2 types of churches, one harmless and one harmful. That's right. 35 Jor nodded. President Netero's purpose of establishing the Hunter Association is to combat these cults, and by comparison, those criminals are nothing at all. In addition, because some criminals will also take action against these cults, we will turn a blind eye to them and not send Hunter to capture them. Richard subconsciously took it, like the Phantom Troop. Count 1. 99 Pion paused and said, okay, that's all I've said. It's not good for you to know too much about other information. You just need to know that when you see a cult, you must eradicate it. 5. And the way to tell the difference is also very simple. How to say, cult people can be seen at a glance, even if you don't know it. But as long as you see them, you will subconsciously, and the word cult will appear in your mind. 5 This matter, so far. In the ruins, I will report it to the Hunter Association for other hunters to deal with. As for Richard, you continue to practice and learn the nun technique. Peng Si, you continue to do physical training. Richard and Pence looked at each other and nodded. Back in the room, Richard took a shower first, then lie in bed. This time I went to the ruins, and I gained a lot. The first is the addition of spiderweb ability. The second one is the strengthening of my physique, especially the defense after the death of Lilith and Sally. But what Richard cares about now is not this. It's the message that Jorn said. The Dark Continent mentioned by Pion is completely different from what I know from the plot. 5 No, it can't be said to be completely different. Maybe the so-called 5 major disasters are just a few of them, which were announced by the Hunter Association. The Hunter Association also knows more creatures, but they have not leaked out. Those creatures which affect human beings produce such a thing as a church. Then, the one, Ajfa, I saw, the huge creature in the deep sea. Is it also one of the creatures of the Dark Continent? What is his purpose? Give me strength. What do you want me to do? Richard is very concerned about this. If you want to know more, then going to the Dark Continent becomes a must. However, with my current strength, if I go to the Dark Continent, I can only die. What I can do now is 3 things. The first one is to improve strength. Second, investigate the Dark Sonata. Third, investigate those cults. The next day, Pion didn't get up, and it was Kalen who went to the training ground to teach Richard Liu. My sister will become weak for a long time after using that state. 99, Richard nodded. This is the reason why Pion will let other hunters go to the Aftermath ruins. If Pion's condition is normal, he can take care of the Aftermath himself. After all, Jorn has this right and this strength. Peng Si was on the other side, continuing physical training. The so-called flow is the perfect control of the flow of Qi, a thought Wherever you want key to appear will appear in which part, and the control of key will reach 100% at 5 in this way. The utilization can be maximized. With the same amount of energy, a nun who has mastered the flow will be several times stronger than those who have not mastered the flow. Kalen looked at Richard. However, your control ability is already very strong. It shouldn't take too long to master the flow. Kalen taught Richard the key points of flow and hard. 3 days later, Jorn finally came out of the room. The whole person looked sullen, but compared to before, it is much better. Jorn was sitting in a chair. Sitting next to her is Kalen. Kalen hesitated for a moment and said, "Sister, what do you think of Richard and Pence?" "Yes, at my age, I am far worse than them, especially Richard." "Then do we want to invite them to join our team?" 99, Kalen said. "Charlie, the 4 of them, are all dead. Our team, only the 2 of us are left." Jorn was silent for a while. "Never mind. I want to take a break." 99, "Let's talk when I have an idea." Also, Richard wasn't like the type of guy who would join other people's teams. He seemed to have his own business to do. And at this time, a phone call came in. Richard connected. "Richard." "Hisoka, it's me," Hisoka said. "I have found a dark Sonata. Come to fulfill the promise. I will wait for you in the Sky Arena." Richard heard Hisoka's voice, trembling, excited. "It is good." Chapter 85, Dark Sonata. Hanging up the phone, Richard assessed his strength. Mindfulness B. After absorbing the breath of the monsters transformed by Lilith and Sally, Richard's physique has been enhanced to a certain extent, and the enhancement of his physique has also increased the amount of ki. And Richard's spiritual practice has never stopped. Tricks C++. Before Richard evaluated himself as C, because of the high level of nun skills, Richard can't, but now, apart from the flow and the hard Richard still mastered, not very well, the others are mastered. The radius of the circle has been raised from the initial 3 meters to 10 meters. Richard is different from Nobunaga. Richard has the means of ranged attacks and requires a larger circle. In the amount of recitation, Richard is much more than Nobunaga. The comprehensive evaluation of Nobunaga is only C grade. Physique B. Richard's physique evaluation is B. But in fact, if Richard fights with a person with physique B, then Richard will have the advantage, because Richard's defensive ability will be far stronger than the opponent's. Big move. A. This has not changed. The picture scroll of greed, the crazy Sonata, these 2 abilities are very strong. Overall, B+. With my current strength, facing Hisoka, I don't worry about losing. I know Hisoka's ability, but Hisoka is not very clear about my ability. Once the picture scroll mazes out, the loser is definitely Hisoka. But this ability is not suitable for use in the Sky Arena. Too many people will know. In this battle, I mainly rely on the recorder. Mind Bomb, Strengthened Tongue, Spider Web, and my own fighting ability. Richard came to Jorn. "Senior, I am very grateful to the senior for taking care of me during this time. I have basically learned all of Nun's high-level skills, and the rest mainly depends on my own practice. So, Peng Si and I will not continue to disturb the seniors." Jorn glanced at Richard. "Don't bother. I have to thank you for the last time in the ruins. Otherwise, Kalen and I may go there and never return, and you deserve to teaching in skills. All hunters who have passed the hunter exam will have this treatment." Richard smiled. "But you teach very well, Senior Pion. Not all hunters can get such a good professor." 35. Where are you going, Richard? Sky Arena is to go to Promise. Jor nodded. Okay, I see. Tonight, I'll let Kalen prepare a bit more abundantly, and it's a practice for you. 5. Too much trouble. No trouble. We are now teammates who have fought together. If you have anything in the future, you can call me at any time. You are welcome. If you can help, I will definitely help. Thank you, Senior. Dinner was great, and surprisingly, not a lot of carrots. Jorn took care of Richard and Pensie's tastes. When you're free, you can always come and see. It is good. Had dinner. Richard and Pence went downstairs with their packed luggage. Pion and Kylene send the two to the airship square. Senior Payon, Senior Kalen, goodbye. 99 Richard Burns, goodbye. Boarding the airship and sitting on the seat, Peng Si couldn't help but turn her head. Don't want to leave? Number 35 Peng, C shook her head and said, "It's just that Senior Pion and Senior Kylene are very good people, and I am very envious of them. They can have their own manner. 5, it's a good life like this. We will have some in the future." Richard tapped Pence on the shoulder. There is no need to transfer in the middle, and the airship can directly reach the world where the Sky Arena is located. Tom Day. Richard closed his eyes. Sudden, Richard felt something on his shoulders. Looking up, he saw Peng Si leaning on his shoulder. Because Richard turned his face sideways, Pence's warm breath hit Richard's cheek directly. A smell of honey wafted out. Richard noticed that even when he was asleep, Pence's brows were still wrinkled. "Thanks for your hard work." With Peng Si's strength, Richard actually has a bit of an element of encouragement in it. According to the normal route, Peng Si should practice for a few more years to reach the standard of passing the Hunter exam, and then go to take the Hunter exam and learn none. But Richard brought this step forward. Moreover, before Peng Si learned to read, he brought Peng Si into the world of none. It's tiring. It's not just physical training, it's physical and spiritual. A gleam of sparkle appeared on the corner of Peng Si's mouth. Richard pulled out a tissue and reached out to wipe it. Peng Si suddenly woke up. "What's wrong?" Subconsciously grabbed Richard's hand. "It's nothing, it's safe." Only then did Peng Si notice the tissue in Richard's hand and immediately understood something, and her face flushed. "Excuse me." "No, I'm embarrassed to let you see those in advance." 5 No, I find it quite interesting. 55 Peng Si said with a smile. "Besides, becoming stronger is a very interesting thing in itself, and I don't regret it." The airship has landed. The two got off the airship. Go to the hotel first. Richard has his own room in the Sky Arena, but Pence doesn't. And Richard wasn't going to stay in the Sky Arena for too long. Therefore, it is a more appropriate choice to book a room in a hotel. 1 suite, 2 bedrooms. I'm going to make a call. 99, Richard came to the balcony. After that, Hisoka's number was dialed. "Hisoka, I'm here. I'll come down right now. Let's meet at the restaurant across from Sky Arena." 99, good. 35, Richard hung up the phone and looked at Pence, who was cleaning up. "Peng Si, come and clean up later. Let's go down first. Hisoka is already waiting for us at the restaurant below." The two went downstairs. Go to the restaurant Hisoka described. Sitting by the window, Hisoka waved when he saw Richard. As for Pence, Hisoka ignored him. Hisoka doesn't have any interest in Pence, too weak, and doesn't have the kind of sparkle in Gon and Killua. Richard walked in. "Hisoka, long time no see." 5, haven't seen you for a long time. Hisoka handed over the menu. "Let's order." Richard nodded and opened the menu. "I ordered a few myself," and handed it to Peng Si. After that, the menu returned to Hisoka. "Dark Sonata, have you brought it?" "Brought it," Hisoka said. "This thing is not easy to get. I saw it at a small auction of an ancient gangster, and the other party just showed it off and didn't mean to sell it." 99 Hisoka didn't go on, and Richard didn't ask. Because there are only 2 possibilities. One is to kill each other and rob. One is stealing. But for Richard, it made no difference. Now that things are in Richard's hands, this is the most important thing. Chapter 86 playing. I'll go back. Make sure things are okay. I'll go to the arena. It is good. Hisoka couldn't hold back, and his inner excitement was overwhelmed. In this world, there are not many people who can meet Hisoka's requirements. As far as Richard knows, Gon, Killua, Krallo, Ilmi, and Huasher Dolong are barely half of them. And now this world has more of itself. The dishes are here. Let's eat first. Pence was less afraid of Hisoka. "I didn't know none at all before. A strange thing suddenly appearing must be terrifying. But now, although Peng Si hasn't learned none yet, she already understands the concept of none and has seen the strength of Richard and Jorn, so she is not so afraid of Hisoka." Hisoka suddenly mentioned something. "Richard, by the way, there is news that has something to do with you. Do you want to hear it?" "What's the 007 message?" "The World's Gang, one of the 10 old men, Xi and Jed, has offered you a reward, and the amount is very high." "Reward? What?" "The reason is that you have something to do with his son's death." Richard frowned. "Isn't this matter already on Maggie's shoulders?" Richard gave Maggie 2 million rennies. After that, Maggie resisted this matter. The news was also announced. Isn't the death of the son of Singe done by Maggie of Phantom Troop? What does it have to do with me? Hisoka smiled. Maggie has also been offered a bounty. However, the reputation of the Phantom Troop is there, and not many people dare to catch the members of the Phantom Troop. However, Richard, they don't know your strength. 5, therefore, many people will follow you. Richard nodded. I see, thanks. If they want to come, let them come. For opponents of this level, Richard no longer cares, and those who will act for a little bounty from Singed are just characters who can't be on the table. Richard is not afraid of evening beasts, let alone those. Richard and Hisoka talking. Peng Si was eating quietly beside him. Sudden, Richard glanced around the corner. Hisoka, are you talking about them? I didn't leak your news. I believe you won't do such a boring thing. Maybe because I stayed in the Sky Arena for a long time before, and they thought I might appear here again. Richard put down his chopsticks. I've eaten. Hisoka, do you want to be together? Hisoka frowned. Last time during the Hunter exam, didn't I rob you of a good show? So, this time, this game belongs to me. Do you want to play it? Hisoka glanced at the corner. Weak is a little weaker, but it sounds like this thing is quite interesting. Then let's go. A group of 3 walked out of the restaurant. Those people followed immediately. Richard shook his head. Really poor tracking skills. This tracking technique is not as good as even those candidates who were eliminated in the 4th exam of the Hunter exam. The 3 walked into an alley. Several figures came to the entrance of the alley, a little hesitant. But after hesitating, he chose to walk in. Get your weapons out and be ready to fight at any time. 6 people in total, 2 for each. It is good, alley corner. Sudden, the 6 felt the scene in front of them changed. A bee falls. The poison needle pierced the neck of a man. Immediately, the venom follows the bloodstream and spreads throughout the body. The man's face turned black at a speed visible to the naked eye. Pence came behind the other. The sharp blade was sent directly behind the opponent's heart. Draw out. The man just opened his mouth, and a few bees rushed into the mouth. Blocking the voice that had reached the man's throat abruptly, his body twitched, and he fell down. Pence checked it again and determined that the 2 were indeed dead, and then walked in Richard's direction. Richard's goal. 1 is dead. The other one is being entangled in the picture scroll of greed, with only one mouth exposed. I ask you answer. Who are you hired by? How much is the bounty? Besides me, who else is being offered a bounty for this? How many of you have come? Are there better ones? This information, Hisoka has already said part of it. However, Richard still wanted to ask himself again to be sure. Under such circumstances, before Richard began to torture, the other party had already entertained them all. The package is like a mummy, which in itself can bring great fear to people. Richard got information 0, similar to what Hisoka said. Among Singe's bounty, Maggie's bounty is obviously much more than mine. After all, the information that Singe got was that Maggie killed his son, and Singe didn't know my true strength, thinking I was just Sedeso's level. And these people are completely bullying the soft and afraid of the hard. They don't dare to provoke Maki, and everyone wants to kill me. Richard thought for a moment. The scroll is tight. The people among them were forcibly entangled and died. Hisoka stepped out from the side. There is still a little bloodstain on a card. Hisoka, it's getting late. I'll go back to the hotel first. See you tomorrow. See you tomorrow. In the alley, there were 6 more corpses. But no one cares. Richard didn't even deal with it, because now all 3 of Richard have a hunter license. Killing such a person is completely beyond the scope of exemption. Pungsi, you go wash first, I'll go later. It is good. Richard took out the box that Hisoka had given him. Open. Inside is a sheet music. Richard looked over carefully. Nothing special. On the surface, it looks just like a normal sheet music. I remember that the melody changed because I heard the dark sonata. It may have to be played to have that effect. 35. This chapter is the flute chapter. I used the recorder, and I can play it too. Pensie's voice sounded outside. Richard, 5.0. I have already washed it, and the water will help you put it away. Okay, I'll be right there. 35. Richard only soaked for a while before returning to the room again. Painting maze. The picture of greed, under Richard's control, enveloped the entire room. After that, Richard took out the recorder and played it gently according to the contents of the score. Dark Sonata, Richard understands. Somewhat similar to the Mad Sonata. The longer you listen, the more damage you get. But if it's just a little bit, it doesn't matter. However, after playing it, Richard realized that this Dark Sonata seemed to have no effect on him at all. I didn't feel the change in my emotions at all. Nothing like the melody happened. It's like just playing an ordinary tune. Chapter 87, the third ability in at this time. Richard saw it suddenly. The score of the Dark Sonata, spontaneous combustion without fire, starting from the edge, little by little, turned into ashes, powder. Keep falling. A hint of black breath drifted towards Richard. To be precise, it floated towards the recorder in Richard's hand. A heavy drowsiness immediately enveloped Richard. Richard forcibly supported it and lay down on the bed. After that, I couldn't hold on anymore. The sheet music was completely turned into powder. The picture scroll, the recorder, all disappeared. A darkness enveloped Richard. Gradually, Richard seemed to see something. A dense jungle. A little too quiet. Richard took 2 steps forward. Suddenly see the light. A huge tree, at a cursory glance, reaches at least several hundred meters. Standing in this forest, compared with the trees next to it, it looks out of place. Sudden, a pair of eyes appeared from behind the tree. Huge head. Fierce, intimidating. This is the head of a snake. With the snake's movement, the tree in front of Richard's eyes trembled involuntarily. This snake, 09, is too big. Nothing is smaller than a tree trunk. The whole snake wrapped around the tree trunk, circle after circle. He raised his head high and looked down at Richard below. Richard's figure in front of this snake was as tiny as a bug. 2 tails stick out from his side. A name entered Richard's mind. Two-tailed snake. Dark continent. One of the 5 major disasters. Richard understood immediately. Piorn said that the creatures of the Dark Continent will have an impact on the human world and affect human beings through certain media. So this Dark Sonata is undoubtedly the medium of the two-tailed snake. Sudden, the two-tailed snake suddenly opened its mouth. A hissing sound rang out. Next moment, I saw the two-tailed snake rush in Richard's direction. The mouth of the blood basin opened wide. In one bite, Richard can be swallowed. And Richard, because of an A, couldn't even move. But at this time, a huge tentacle protruded from the void behind Richard, wet, towards the two-tailed snake. The two-tailed snake bit on the tentacle, but it didn't do much damage to the tentacles. On the contrary, the moment the tentacle touched the two-tailed snake, it was wrapped around it, firmly attached to the body of the two-tailed snake, twisted hard, and then wrapped again. Crack! 99, Richard heard the sound of broken bones. A burst of black aura emanated from the tentacles, slowly wrapping the pair of tailed snakes. Richard seemed to hear the sound of animals chewing. Belch! There was also a hiccup. The surrounding scene gradually disappeared. Two-tailed snake, tentacles, forest, the next day. Richard opened his eyes and stepped back subconsciously. It was a dream. However, it's not just a dream. Richard's eyes flashed. One thing is certain. The Dark Sonata is the medium of the two-tailed snake. 5, I completely absorbed the power of this medium. That's why I saw the two-tailed snake in my dream. The two-tailed snake in the dream, trying to kill me. 35, with a high probability, if you're killed in a dream, the real me will also die. And at that time, the huge creature in the deep sea appeared and helped me. Richard combined the information he got from Jorn and what he had seen this time, and organized it. These creatures are collectively called disaster creatures. Disaster creatures affect human beings through media. 9. Some are neutral, some are evil. Humans can gain strength from the medium, but they need to be recognized by catastrophic creatures. The power of those cultists is obtained from the medium of evil and catastrophic creatures. 99. But it's not clear what the evil calamity creature wants to do with the cult. Two-tailed snake, it should be considered neutral, with the Dark Sonata as a medium. If you get the approval of the two-tailed snake, you will gain a part of the power of the two-tailed snake. It's like a melody. 35, without recognition, you will die. 5, Richard frowned. My situation and the melody are actually somewhat similar. It's just that what I got was not the approval of the two-tailed snake. but the approval of that huge creature in the deep sea. That creature, with a high probability, is also one of the creatures of the Dark Continent, stronger than the two-tailed snake. Neither I nor Melody can simply be called none. Richard thought of another person, Karapika. The power of fiery red eyes is also likely to come from this. Then, combined with what Piorn said, the handling of the criminals of the Nun, the Phantom Troop genocide, may not be as simple as it seems. It might have something to do with disaster creatures. And if fiery eyes like that, then the legends of the seven beauties circulating in this world, and others, more or less, will have some kind of connection with the disaster creatures in the Dark Continent. And the egg in a pot ceremony of the Kakin Empire. 35. The egg in the pot is probably also the medium of the disaster creature. Richard shook his head. But these things, I don't need to think too much now. I'm still looking ahead. Richard looked at the pile of powder on the ground. I absorbed the dark Sonata, and the spiritual pollution ability of my crazy Sonata has been enhanced. In addition to the madness, there is more murderous aura. This is from the power of the two-tailed snake. 35. Besides that, I also awakened the third nun. Richard thought for a moment. Immediately, a book appeared in Richard's hands. Arrogant Story 007. The way to use this ability is to materialize this book before the battle, and the book will automatically generate a story when I finish reading the story. Then, my strength will be greatly improved in a short period of time. It's even more improved than Jorn going to second state, equivalent to 10 times under normal circumstances. There are two costs. After one use, it will enter a 3-month cooling off period, and you cannot use this ability again within these 3 months. The second is this Arrogant Story. 100 copies will be generated, and these copies will randomly appear in any corner of the world. If someone reads this story, the book will disappear, and this person will be affected by spiritual pollution and become an arrogant monster. That's the side effect. Richard let the book in his hand disappear. The process of using this ability is somewhat similar to a Luga who belongs to the Zoldyck family. A Luga can do a lot of things that humans can't imagine through the way that others make wishes to her. But the price will be reflected on the surrounding people. That's why the Zoldyck family is so afraid of a Luga. 35. Once someone grants Yalu an unfulfilled wish, then, because of the backlash, the entire Zoldyck family may die because of it. Killua is saved gone by using an order, not a wish, in exchange for another price. Chapter 88. Matching Errors. Had breakfast. Pung Si, you stay in the hotel, I'll go to the arena. It is good. Richard came to the arena. Compared with the last time, this time, Richard's strength is much stronger. When he left, Richard's overall strength could only be regarded as C+. And now, Richard is a B+. The elevator door opens. A figure entered Richard's sight. Long purple hair. What a coincidence. 35, yes. Maggie's eyes moved slightly when she saw Richard. In addition to being too coincidental, Maggie also felt that Richard was completely different from the last time he saw him. Speaking of the previous Richard, Maggie felt mysterious words. So, now Richard gave Maggie the feeling that it was powerful and mysterious. Sir, how many floors do you want to go to? 200 floors. Okay. Maggie glanced at Richard and hesitated. Do you know about Singe about your bounty? No. After the news came out, many people came to look for me, but they were all killed by me, so they might put their eyes on you first, but the people who came to you would not be too strong. If you need help, you can come to me anytime. 9. Richard smiled. No, I've seen those people before. They're not a threat. They're just a little troublesome. 5. That's good. There was silence for a while. Ding. 35. The elevator has arrived. The two walked out. Richard, what are you planning to do when you return to the Sky Arena this time? Fulfill the promise and fight Hisoka. Hisoka. Maggie's pupils shrank slightly. Hisoka looks like a pervert, but he's actually a pervert. He has a lot of tricks. When you fight with Hisoka, be careful of his tricks. Okay, Maggie, thank you. No, you're one of my clients after all. Richard smiled. Without certainty, it is impossible to come. Before yesterday, Richard had been sure. Hisoka is strong, but Richard is not weak either. And Richard's ability is even more bizarre. In addition, After getting the third ability yesterday, Richard basically has a 100% certainty, even if Hisoka came up with something Richard didn't expect. But a story of arrogance. Richard's strength immediately increased tenfold. How much is 10 times Richard? B plus 10 times. This is the level that has already touched the A level. With pure ki, Richard can crush Hisoka. I'm going to sign up. Maggie nodded and walked to her room. Richard came to the registration desk. Fill in your name. Submit the registration form. After that, go downstairs again. Give Hisoka a call. Hisoka, I have submitted the application. It is good. Hisoka answered only one word and hung up immediately. For this battle, Hisoka couldn't wait. When he first met Richard, Hisoka looked down on Richard's nun. However, during Hunter's exam, Hisoka caught a glimpse of the picture scroll maze. For Richard, Hisoka became interested in fighting. And later, especially this time, Hisoka could clearly feel that Richard was getting stronger again. This made Hisoka even more excited. Fighting with such people is fun. Figures flashed in Hisoka's mind. Gon, Killua, Ilmi, Krallo. These are the opponents Hisoka wants to fight. Gon and Killua, however, are a little off. It also takes time to grow. Richard glanced at the time and prepared to go back to the hotel to practice. But just stepped out of the gate of the Sky Arena. The bell rang. Hisoka's very resentful voice sounded. Matching error. Something went wrong? What do you mean? Richard frowned. Hisoka said, before I submitted the application, Kaisher Doru submitted the application. So now the matching battle is between you and Kaisher Doru, not me. 5 Richard. When Huasher Dolong saw the result of this match, he was also stunned. Because Huasher Doru wants to fight Hisoka. What shall we do now? Just wait another day. All right. Richard hung up the phone. But Richard didn't care too much. Richard didn't look forward to the fight with Hisoka, just to fulfill the promise, and Richard wanted the news of the Dark Sonata. That key person has not yet appeared. Melody, one of Kurapika's teammates. By the way, the ability to Melody was born because of the Dark Sonata, and you can hear a lot of things that ordinary people can't hear, but for Kurapika, the first time I met, I felt intimacy. Could this have something to do with Red Eye? It's very possible. Then, the possibility that Kurapika's fiery red-eyed ability comes from a calamity creature is even greater, and there must be some medium in the Kaluta clan. Richard returned to the hotel and guided Pensie's training. Richard, how long will it take for me to practice none? It should be almost there. Richard hesitated for a moment, then said, well, I'll take you to the training ground and take the test. If you pass, then I'll start teaching you none. 6 good. Pensie's eyes lit up. Pence has been looking forward to none for a long time. This can improve a person's strength a lot in an instant. Different people could develop different abilities. Pengsi can't wait to get it. Pengsi was also very concerned about what happened to the ruins last time. After lunch, Richard took Pence to the nearby training ground. Paid for a day. The battle between Richard and Huasher Dolong was at night. Let's start. Richard took out the form. It is good. Pensy nodded heavily. The first test, strength. Sudden. Richard saw a familiar figure on the other side of the training ground. A little boy with an inch head and thick eyebrows. The breath is steady. It's not like a child of this age can do it at all. Even stronger than many adults. And not far from the side, there's a young man sitting. White shirt with glasses and holding a book in his hands. A nerd look. The young man answered the phone, talked to the little boy, and walked outside. There was only a little boy left in the corner. 2 names entered Richard's mind. Cloud Valley and Zoosi. Professor Gon and Richard of Yungu are not an accident, but a deliberate arrangement of the Hunter Association. This can be clearly seen from the later plots. Yungu is indeed a more suitable candidate. The orthodoxy of the origin of the heart. A disciple of Biscuit. 35. The real strength has not been shown, but it will certainly not be too bad. 35. Several young people entered the training ground, looked around for a week, and then looked at Zoosi in the corner. You brat, get out of here. Here we want. 99. Zoosi retorted. I'm here first. First come first. First come first. Don't you understand? First come. First come? What is that? All I know is that fist of the last word. 9. With that said, the young man grabbed Zoosi. Boom! The next moment, the young man flew out 7. Chapter 89. Richard versus Huasher Dolong Richard shook his head. These people are too weak. Can't even beat a child. This is because they took the initiative to bully people, and they deserve to be beaten up. The rest of the youth grabbed Zoosi, but the same as that young man. Bang, boom, boom. 35A series of voices sounded. Several young people were all knocked to the ground by Zoosi. This makes the young people feel ashamed and angry. A few dignified adults can't even beat a child. Little devil, I'm going to kill you. A young man secretly took out a knife. Suddenly, Zoosi's eyes changed. One punch. Crack. There was a sound of bones breaking from the young man's body. The expression became distorted. Richard withdrew his hand. Yingu's figure walked in from the outside, saw this scene, and was stunned for a moment. Zoosi, what did you do? I do not have. Hearing the reprimand in Yingu's tone, Zoosi said a little aggrieved. It was they who moved first. A young man stared at Yingu. You bully people because of your strength. I won't just let this matter go. I'm going to sue you, and I'm going to put you in jail. 35 Yingu stared at Zoosi, frowning. Zoosi, what the hell is going on? They did it first. 55 Richard took a few steps here and said, I saw that they insulted first, then moved, and even moved the knife. In addition, the surveillance on this can also prove it. 99 at this time, several young people noticed the surveillance, and their expressions changed. He got up quickly and ran away. Brother, thank you. You're welcome. Richard didn't say much, but went back to Pensie's side. Pence stopped. Richard, what happened over there? A little dispute. Richard said, that child is very talented, and at this age, he has already learned to read. However, just open aura nodes and learn a rap. However, the arrangement of the source of the heart is only when the physique meets sufficient standards before teaching can be carried out. Zoosi got a professor at this age, which is enough to see Zoosi's talent. Therefore, it is inevitable that Zoosi can become the layer master. The floor master of the Sky Arena is far from the upper limit of Zoosi. Hearing this sentence, Peng Si couldn't help but glance at Zoosi. Okay, let's continue testing. Good. Ajfa, Pensie's test has already been completed. It was even better than what Richard had expected, which proved that Pence had really worked hard in the past period, not even just a degree of hard work. Instead, try hard. Sir, thank you for what happened just now. Yunga came over with Zoosi. No, it's just a little effort. Yunga hesitated for a moment.
No more novels? Take part in the voting. The most requested novels and those with the most likes will be chosen for publication on euroaudiobooks.com. There, I can upload as much as I want without the risk of receiving a strike. Our 18 novels and other content that exceed what is morally acceptable are only published on Patreon or the free novels page. Remember, the site is funded by donations on Ko-fi and Patreon memberships.